Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to podcast!
I hate you.
Why?
That's very bad.
Because I peaked.
No, you're just really not good at that.
Come on, who didn't love 90s boxing and
Let's
wrestling?
get ready to podcast!
This guy here did not watch 90s boxing and wrestling, nor any other decade of boxing and wrestling.
Or wrestling.
He was a famous, well-known announcer who always did Let's Get Ready to Rumble.
And if you do...
What was his name again? I should know this because it is part of pop culture.
Yeah, I don't remember
either.
either.
I don't know.
Michael Buffett. Was Michael... No.
He was in Real Steel.
Jimmy Buffett?
No, that's a singer.
Imagine, though. Imagine if he was that guy.
I would listen.
It would be entertaining. It'd be a much mellower event.
So, this past weekend I went to the final performance of Nelson Lugo's Epic Win Burlesque. It's called Epic Win Burlesque. The End. It was a great show. They brought out the greatest hits of performers. Nasty Canasta performed to the Flash Gordon theme, the Queen version. Every time they went Flash, she flashed the crowd with a giant cape. It was kind of awesome.
Yes, I can imagine someone yelling out Flash could possibly befit that.
Yeah. Also, you would have loved
maybe
this performer named Lefty Lucy did a burlesque routine to Domo Arigato, Mr. Roboto, dressed as the cheesy, blocky, 80s sci-fi robot.
These are the greatest names. They could just play back the amount of silly names that have occurred in the last minute.
Just out of curiosity, has Lefty Lucy ever worked with Righty Tighty?
There is no such performer as Righty Tighty, as far as I know.
There begs to be one.
That's true.
That's helpful.
I
I got to talk
that
to
would be a great duo.
That would be.
It would be.
It's obvious.
Who would call themselves Righty? No one is named Tighty. Well, unless they wear tighty whities. Male burlesquer.
There are male burlesquers, but
actually
none
no.
by that name.
A co-ed burlesque show.
Work.
There we go.
Yeah, co-ed. It has to be something a little bit low key.
But yeah, it was a great show. I had a good time. It's sad to see it go. Schaefer the Dark Lord performed. He did one of his songs from his new record called "Boo I'm a Ghost," singing about being a ghost.
I love how you bought that album a couple of minutes ago, so that now I can get it. From you.
Yeah, I can get it from you. Also, I got to talk to Nelson for a bit. He says hello, and that he would love to do the podcast again. Actually, meet you this time.
It would be nice for me not to be zombified.
Yeah, so I'm going to try and work it out for November.
For him to hear me say hello back, he has to listen.
That's true. Hopefully he does.
That's right.
But yeah, it was a good show. It's a shame to see it go, but he's focusing on his magic and some other stuff, so we'll see how that goes. He's excited about a one-man show he's working on, so...
I thought he always was a one-man show.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Schaefer the Dark Lord came in. They do a podcast together. Right?
They do.
But as far as the magic is concerned, that's all Nelson, right?
Well, yeah, but Epic Win Burlesque has always been the two of them. They always hosted it together.
Oh,
they're best friends. Yeah.
Gotcha.
But
speaking of Schaefer, he also has a free album you said online now.
Yes, it's been out since October. I just only downloaded it now because I had forgotten about it.
This October or last October? Because right now it is October.
Last October.
Oh, it's
no. Maybe it was over the summer. I don't remember. Anyway, it's called Junk Drawer. It's a collection of stuff that's previously unreleased and some remixes. He also covers "So What You Want" by the Beastie Boys, which was cool.
Or something.
What you want.
What phase are you in right now, John?
But
I don't know. Sugar's hitting me all over the place.
Yeah.
Great. But yeah, so I'm hoping to have both of them on soon. Also, I've been talking to Nate, who's going to come on very soon and do our pop culture music podcast as we talk about John Williams, which we'll hopefully do by the end of the month.
Yes, at some point we will be tackling the great John Williams, and
I keep voting for the
doing
Star
a retro
Wars
review.
That keeps going for
he
the Star Wars.
He wants us to do a whole episode just reviewing Star Wars.
Happen.
You guys had a point with choosing something like Jurassic Park
or Jaws.
Yeah, there is definite merit in those because there's
you said that so lightly.
No,
yes,
it's true.
I suppose there is a certain amount of merit.
No, because there's 1/8 of the work in it. They are not hours long.
I think you're underestimating.
I cannot do a 4-hour album review.
Well, when it comes to Yeah, probably. If you add up 4 through 6 Star Wars, it probably will
4-hour
come
album
out to
review. You
somewhere.
mean like Flying Lotus, which felt like 4 hours.
Hey, that was not 4 hours.
That's
though.
relativity.
And actually, a lot of those songs are very short.
You should really look up Einstein to really understand what you're talking about right now.
Let's get into our album for this week. Oh, wait, really quick before that, actually. On the 17th, which is also Sarah Bisman's birthday, the Wasties are playing at the Way Station on her birthday. So come out, see them. There's going to be a bunch of other bands performing as well. I think Painless might be playing. Oh, and also that Saturday, the 19th, Painless Parker's, you guys will be interested in this, especially John. It's on Painless Parker's birthday. Painless Parker plugged in. He's doing all of his songs with a full band.
Which I do think is very clever. It's like everybody likes to go unplugged.
So it's that Saturday
He's
night.
usually
No.
unplugged.
I'm a little upset because I will be in Pennsylvania.
Oh, that's the weekend you're in Pennsylvania?
That's
Yeah, that
the
stinks.
weekend. I'm actually driving back from Pennsylvania.
That stinks.
That's at night.
Sorry, buddy.
Thanks.
Oh.
Because he's going to cover a couple of Green Day songs, I think.
Oh man!
So he had said, I think, yeah.
And I guess I should
Not
be
only
like,
that, but he's got a better voice.
Man, shoot. I'll be missing Green Day tracks. Duh.
There's no reason why you can't go.
No, that's sarcasm. Not a fan. That make any sense? Okay, fine.
What's he talking about? Anyway.
John is giving me the evil stare right now.
Yeah, I know. I'm getting a little rage-filled.
Let's.
I'm okay with you making fun of other bands like Weezer and stuff like that, but
Let's
do
also-
not
But apparently
touch.
Green Day is untouchable.
Do
Or
not touch
something.
early
Or something.
Green Day. Do not touch
Something.
it.
By the way-
If you wish to rekindle these debates, then please revisit episodes 14, 24, and 37. Uno, dos, and tre.
No, if you're not allowed to talk smack about anything before super hits. Period. Semicolon.
Actually, I assume.
Exclamation point.
I meant to tell you also,
no
at
will
Pete,
not be
this is
taking-
a slight tangent before the album route. We were at, our friend Pete celebrated a birthday last weekend. Happy birthday, Pete. He brought up how he still doesn't understand how you call yourself a Weezer fan and still like Hurley. He brought it up. Just saying. It was a
Look at
terrible
it.
record.
No,
Terrible.
I look at it as
Terrible.
Weezer got experimentative.
And so for this
Not a word.
week's
Not a word.
album,
Invalid. Okay.
we are doing my pick for this week. It's Everlast's latest record called The Life Acoustic, a play on the Life Aquatic. The album cover is as such as well. It's an all-acoustic record.
No Life Aquatic references, though, unfortunately.
in the album now.
Well, what's
Just the cover of the album references
What's
it.
appropriate is that the album title is a cover, the album cover is a cover, all of the music is covered.
Yes.
Mostly of himself. He's covering
He's
himself.
mostly covered himself except one track towards the end.
Please
they're
disregard the last minute.
That is totally meta.
They're all acoustic versions of tracks that he had done on his various records. And Everlast is a
He's a.
he's an artist who's dabbles in hip hop, some blues, some rock. He's kind of a little all over the place.
How did he pick his name? Because the artist in question is Whitey Ford, correct?
No, his name is Everlast.
Name is Ever. Well,
His album is called Whitey Ford Sings the Blue. He refers to himself as Whitey Ford. I don't know if that's his actual name or not.
You mean like Everlast birth certificate?
Well, no, I'm saying Whitey Ford maybe is his actual name, but he performs under Everlast.
What else has he been
Right.
involved
That's what I
in?
meant.
He was one of the original members of House of Pain.
Yeah.
Yes, the band who wrote Jump Around. That
Oh,
band.
the band who got me into hip hop.
Very interesting.
But since the mid to late 90s, he's been, the late 90s, early 2000s, he's been going solo under Everlast.
Been solo for a very long time.
His biggest single that you might know is What It's Like, which was one of his first, Black Jesus, which is featured on this record. What's another one? Today is another big one.
Sad Girl.
Sad Girl.
In fact, speaking of which, these are 3 of the first tracks.
So,
They're
this
all
is...
brought under this acoustic record. Try to just sort of strip them down and make them acoustic. I mean, it's basically unplugged. Essentially the opposite of what Painless Parker's doing.
The thing with Everlast is that he's always played acoustic guitar on his tracks, but now with a backbeat, it's, more hip-hop elements or blues elements. This is kind of a straight bluesy rock acoustic record. I mean, there's not much to it. It's just very stripped down.
Blues is not a major component.
Yeah,
This
only very slight blues
It's mostly rock and roll, I guess.
Yeah, this is
Pretty much a straight rock and roll album.
we ended up having our genre discussion. We actually didn't. I don't know if any of you got as far as today's album, but no, I would put this It is rock, and actually it has a big southern rock feel to it, at least in the rhythm.
Well, we were discussing.
But there are moments of blues on this record for sure.
Oh
yes.
Or blues orientation.
Yes.
A little bit of gospel here. There's something.
Funny thing is, I didn't. So, speaking of getting meta, I didn't write the first track name. I know what it is. Sad Girl. But I didn't write it down.
So you were going to be like getting into...
Yeah. Thanks.
Just gloss over.
The first track is...
What was that?
Sad Girl is the first track on the record. One of his big singles, as I recall, anyway. A very easygoing intro track. It's a story about a girl who's been left by her baby daddy, and
a very time-tested song, I think. A time-tested theme.
Yeah, of course, about someone down and out, and it's funny because I've heard him talk about the song, and he says that it's not about a specific girl. It's just he thought of this story in his head of a girl who
the idea of this down and out character, I think, has been around since antiquity.
Yeah.
And portrayed through in modern music since jazz era stuff.
Since modern music.
Okay, so we've established this is not exactly a breakthrough theme.
It's not
it doesn't change the emotions, the sympathy I think that should be had toward a character like this.
This is definitely building sympathy for the character and to feel bad for them, and
it does this, and it actually this is one of the higher tracks for me on this album. It's simple. That's a word we're going to be using in its original, most basic definition. There's very little going on here because this song is complicated in the fact that there's accompaniment to the acoustic guitar.
That's the thing. This is a ballad. What's actually kind of interesting is there's a little bit of a funk. It's a little bit of a funk ballad, actually, just because of the riff here. I'm actually surprised I didn't throw out that genre because it's interesting that you could call this complete acoustic. I mean, of course, it's called Life Acoustic because it's stripped down compared to what he originally did. But the funny thing is that he does actually add
electric
piano. I guess it's the only one that really is electric, but it's very present. It actually has a pretty prominent feature in this first track here.
Yeah.
It provides this riff, which is just so, it goes back to this 70s funk bit, and it kind of does blend with the way he sings, which is got a lot of attitude and everything,
and he's got this, I mean, Everlast has got a very distinct voice as far as this kind of raspy, almost froggy voice.
Yeah. John, what'd you call it?
Smoky frog.
John referred to it as a froggy, smoky voice, which is very interesting. I think that's actually incredibly descriptive.
It is very descriptive, yeah.
Let's put it this way.
I like Sad Girl.
Yeah, I grew on me a little bit.
It was sweet.
Yeah,
it was,
especially in context of this album, I think this really was one of the stronger tracks.
But I noticed something in this which actually becomes a part of a lot of the other songs. His inflection is very, very shoehorned into one way. He starts high, gets low. For every line, he rises high and gets low.
It's more. I noticed that it was more variation in volume necessarily. Like, range-wise, he doesn't have a huge range. But
right,
of course,
but I mean volume.
With the style that he's singing, it's really about volume swells and everything. And that's it's a style. It's not anything to impugn whatnot.
But you can put a timer to it. It's kind of weird.
Oh, you definitely could. It's very predictable in a way.
Yeah, but it's no more predictable than some of Billy Joe's singing, for example, in Green Day. I mean, he's a very predictable singer as well, especially in the mid-range stuff.
I would agree with you there, and to just personally, though, that's not a positive for me. I don't like predictable singing necessarily. I'm not saying that he's done that throughout the history of his work, Everlast here, but he definitely settled upon a niche. Again, nothing to badmouth necessarily. If this is the niche that has given it popularity, go for it. But in the context of this particular song. Because there's so little else going on, but I'm gonna be tame here because of the fact that I actually was drawn in by the electric piano. I think that there was some excellent comp work going on throughout, and it actually was a fairly dynamic feature in this track. While you have other consistencies that are, they're consistent in this track and they're consistent for the rest of the album, such as the rhythm guitar. The rhythm guitar, there's not really a lead guitar. You're not really gonna find a lead guitar in this album. There is just rhythm guitar throughout. So there is a riff, pretty much always in 4/4, and it will always be verse, chorus, verse, chorus. This is not really playing around with form at all. In many times it's even simpler than that. So it's for those reasons that I tend to be a little bit bored out, but there are moments that intrigue me, and one of those moments here is that electric piano. Great comp work.
And for something that might bore you, I feel, is more approachable. And yes, I know you're looking to be challenged, and a lot of people are, and I'm not excusing it. I'm saying, though, that something, especially in the case of this record, it's a very approachable, easily accessible record.
Well, that's because of the basic nature.
I don't know. I've never met a person who doesn't like acoustic music. I mean, it's the
primal.
Fact.
But that's what I'm saying.
We always talk about, guy with a guitar in a coffee shop, and frankly, I think I've thrown around that piece of imagery a little bit too much, just as a metaphor for the kind of thing that is very close and intimate, and it is no more appropriate than right here. This is literally a guy who, this is the type of work of someone who might get on an open mic night.
Yeah.
Whether it's positive or negative, I don't know yet, but it is. He did want to strip this down, so it was a choice.
In Sad Girl, this was a positive. I did not find it in Black Jesus, track 2.
See, and this is where I've kind of got to disagree. Black Jesus is a song that, and especially reminded me after listening to the original version of it, was not more complex than this version. It's a very listy, simple song. He's kind of just
listy, as in
listing. The lyrics are listed. Like he's
I'm really glad you brought that up. I want to just use that as a segue, quick, because it's a good thing to describe a lot of what he does. Because what we didn't really talk about in Sad Girl is lyrics and story and the way we tend to construct albums here. You can't talk about this album without talking about lyrics, without talking about the story, the theme. And in many cases, you could almost imagine it's sort of saving the simplicity in a way. Like if you want to focus on the sad girl and her plight, then lyrics could easily bring that out and could bring out the emotion. But the only problem is that I think in these cases the way that he is so listy, so what he's trying to say is goes from one thing to the other. For instance, Sad Girl was a ballad. As I said, it's a funk ballad, but it's still a ballad. In other words, it's really about the storytelling, but instead of filling out a story, it's more of just like, here's a thing, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. It's hard to really define, like, a message, per se, and I think that's what John is talking about here in Black Jesus.
It's
a little sporadic.
We've gone into the depth of types of lyrics. It wasn't the storytelling, because there really wasn't any progression of a story going on here. It wasn't imagery. It was lists, and that is probably the most appropriate way to do that.
See, I disagree, though. I think there is some imagery here, especially when he's talking about the gangs and violence and like.
But I don't. It's imagery.
What was it? Bloods keep blooding, Crips keep cripping. I mean, it's. I don't know. It's more like saying, "Here's a thing. This is the way it is." Like, I'm not completely down on that, but it's a little weak, I think. It strikes me as that whole MC, here I am, this is what I see, this is how it is. And it's a little tiring after a while.
We'll talk about this a few times.
But
we'll go back to the original. In the original version of this, because I want to talk about the differences. There was layering, there was heavy beat work. In that case, you get a better flow with lyrics of this nature in the hip hop style of music.
Right, I think it's more about like the choices. Not that we're devaluing acoustic music in any regard. It's more like if you pick a song to become acoustic, I feel like there has to be a little more of a careful selection there. For this kind of track, and the stuff that John just pointed out, like that is very much it fits the stage. It really fits an audience. You feel like you need to have them behind you, or
because instead of being a nonsensical list, which is how I really look at the lyrics in this version, it was punctuating imagery in the beat-driven original. Here, because there's no driving force, because there's nothing.
Well, the only driving force is the rhythm guitar, and that rhythm guitar tends to be very much the same throughout. It's not a very dynamic thing. When he picks a riff, he sticks with it.
Yeah, it's not strengthening the lyrics. It's not accenting the lyrics, so you're not getting anything showcasing to you. Black Jesus, White Moses, I mean, it's just not doing anything.
It's one of those "this is me" kind of tracks, you know?
Yeah, and that's exactly why I like it, and I kind of disagree. I think that the lyrics and how he sings it is enough for me to pull me through the song. I mean, the breakdown choruses when he does the na-na-na-na, like, there's so much...
Singing na-na, that was actually, yeah.
There was power and passion in that.
But then he does... In the original, he has this part where he's yelling out, wah, 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 and... Honestly, when he does that little interlude in this song...
I was down with the na-na-na, it wasn't with the wah-wah-wah.
No. It was... The way it's presented in the original is so much different than what it's here. It's a breakdown supposed to be, like, soothing, I guess. It's really just terrible.
I don't know, that's a little...
I really didn't like it.
I disagree.
It comes like this.
I like it. I think it was a nice slowdown to the song, kind of broke up the monotony of the song, because it can be a little bit repetitive, even though I enjoy the song.
I want to get into another thing here. Within his vocal work, he is pretty good with rhyming. I mean, he can rattle off rhymes very, very easily. He's got the
wordsmithing ability.
Yeah.
Wordsmithing.
Yeah. He's probably practiced some freestyling. For all I know, the song may have been born out of such kind of freestyling. That said, sometimes the rhymes are a little bit safe. Just a little bit. Now, I'm coming from a perspective that I'm not, thoroughly within the hip-hop realm here, but I've heard what I've heard. I mean, the only other hip-hop album that we've done on the podcast has been Macklemore and Ryan Lewis, this thing, which was pretty much a debut wonder.
Yeah.
And John could talk that to death.
It was actually a sophomore album.
Was it now?
Yes, it was.
Okay. But the thing here, I'm not going to harass the rhymes, because, he's pretty good rhyming. Meter, though, is a little bit even safer than that. His meter is very much, he's kind of within a confine here. And each and every time he repeats a verse, it will be with almost the exact same meter. Not that you expect it to really vary that much. Meters should be fairly consistent. But you're looking for some variation as you go from verse to verse to verse to verse. And these verses are just very much, here's the next phase. And here's the next phase. So you're looking for something, whether it's the next phase of a story, or a new instrument, or something else, and each time, I just don't see it. I'm waiting for something else, and it just never happens. So, I mean, maybe it's a minor point, but who knows, this could end up being a major point as we look at these tracks.
Actually, I will be going back to that at a later point.
Okay.
That is something that does come up again.
Alright then. Let's talk about Today.
So Today, for me, is one of those songs that I will agree is very repetitive, too long for just a stripped-down acoustic. I didn't get a chance to listen to the non-acoustic version today, so I don't really remember it
today
very well. But this track is kind of forgettable, especially the lyrics. They weren't bad or good, per se. They just were not. They were kind of just there. They weren't anything awful. We've heard worse, but it was a very kind of forgettable
They were
track.
non-impactful.
Yeah, non-impactful.
There was
non-impactful.
The attitudes. I mean, we've talked about it last week. You don't have to even make sense in order to impact a person. Well,
Right.
Yeah, they made sense, but sort of almost laundry list style to a point.
Laundry list. Yeah, this... I mean, these are harsh ways to describe this, but, occasionally it can... You're looking for something to latch onto throughout these tracks, and in this case... I wasn't even really... Whereas in Black Jesus, I was at least drawn in by some of the wordsmithing, here I was even less enthused with that, so I feel like it was another, stripped-down element. For instance, the chorus, to me, was very, very weak. Come on and watch me shine, like the world is mine today. Come on and watch me shine, like the world is mine today. Watch me shine. It's a little...
Which... A line like that works in R&B hip-hop.
You could almost... Well, I'm not even sure. I'm not even sure I'm making a differentiation between, whether it was acoustic or whether... I'm really just kind of looking at the words. It's very,
I'm trying.
I'm trying. Yeah, I'm trying. Exactly. That's kind of the theme at play here.
I mean...
There's some cliche themes here.
No, yeah. I mean, but... Then again, you can find that within a lot of artists that we've reviewed. There are cliche themes that do come up time and time again.
Oh, yeah, but, the thing is, usually, and again, we're up to our 65th album here, or close to, it's normally we're able to find some kind of some fresh aspect. So
Again,
bringing something fresh to the theme. Yes, of course, people are never, and I can almost confidently say, never going to stop writing love songs.
Yeah.
Or writing I'm lonely songs.
In
These
fact,
kinds of things.
I remember a love song that people wrote about why there's so many love songs. I remember that one. Kermit did that one.
That's right. See, that's fresh in a way. That's pretty meta. Pretty meta for a Muppet.
Go Kermit.
A meta Muppet.
But yeah.
Again, I think this, for me, is one of the weaker songs on the album. I found other stuff in the other tracks I like, whereas this one, I don't hate the track. It's kind of just meh. Like, I'm kind of indifferent about it. I don't really have a connection emotionally either.
I kind of agree. I mean, the keyboard here, they brought back the keyboard for this track. I'm not sure if it was in Black Jesus or not.
No.
Maybe I was more focused on the lyrics in Black Jesus, but in this case, they brought it back, and I thought it was very underused, especially when compared against Sad Girl, where it was a prominent feature. Like, I enjoyed it so much there. I was actually kind of drawn into it, which made me rethink Sad Girl in successive listens. But here, it was really just used to accent the chords. Like, on the beat, and again on the beat. Just to, almost copying the same exact chords on the guitar. So it didn't really seem to provide very much to me. I guess also it was a little bit out of place in the chorus. I'm not sure. I don't think it could have. I don't think its place here had any bearing on the track, and I don't think it really could have saved it for me.
I think that this track might have just been just the same.
Right.
Just the same without the piano. Like, if it was just the straight guitar, it wouldn't have been any better or worse for it, I think.
Alright.
I will say maybe the second verse was a little more interesting than the first.
Yeah.
And there was a second guitar that he overlays, which just says that he's not past, adding more instruments
Right.
in post-production, which takes a little bit away from the acoustic, but maybe positively in this particular case. When he does use two guitars against himself, it does kind of fill it out, so that we don't just have the riff.
Right.
So, that was a positive. Say that.
Moving on to track 4, Broken. So this is a song where you start to get a sense of emotionally where this album is trying to come from.
This is the first significant jump into the emotion pool, in my opinion.
I would argue that Sad Girl had some emotion, but definitely not as potent as Broken. I would say that...
Sad Girl, yes, but I was not yet really being entertained by this emotion. Broken had that sweet sadness element. It had that element.
It's a beautiful
of that
ballad.
I mean, let's not beat around the bush here. I think we all know why that is. The piano.
Yes.
I mean, okay, it's a new element, alright? Yeah, maybe we are so shallow as to say, hey, something new, I'm drawn in. Piano has that depth to it.
Yeah,
and
but
also, the composition of it was kind of sweet. At least, especially the intro.
Yeah.
It's going to grab you. You just know, the second you hear it, it's like, ooh, you're brought into their world, sort of. I'm still not 100% down with this track, just because even when brought in, and after I'm familiar with it for a verse, they didn't expand it.
See,
There was
something bit of a shame.
There was something that they did very well. That was done very well here, and I think that was the beginning of the chorus. Now the problem is that chorus actually really takes a turn halfway through. It's kind of weird. It starts with I just really enjoy these lines. I'm broken like a promise. I'm shattered like a dream. And it goes into this nice little sweet chorus, and then it gets thrown with I'm broken like a record, and then it just takes a turn on me, and it's weird.
I forget whether that was before or after the first one, so whether it turned for the good or turned for the worse, who knows? But I don't know. There's just something.
See, I
talk
like
about
the
really
chorus
being
in it.
nitpicky with lines here. I agree. The line that John just read is pretty interesting. The first one, but then I'm broken like a record, singing the same old song. I'm broken like the heart of a man that's run away from love too long. This is just really reeking of cliche. I want to like this track. I really, really do.
See, but I don't care so much that it's cliche, because I like the chorus in its whole. Yes, the second half of the chorus is a little weaker, but as a whole, I like the chorus. The imagery is very strong, and the emotion conveyed clearly. Cliche or not.
I really do enjoy it as well. But, speaking to what Steve said, at this point, lyrics I gotta be nitpicky on, because there's just...
There's problems.
Not enough otherwise.
Here's the thing. It's sweet. It really is sweet, but I've heard it. I want to like it. I actually even might think it's relatable. But Here's the thing. I need more than a 3-chord progression to, I guess, put life in perspective, which I can only assume that that's what this track is trying to do, is put life into perspective for you. I mean, acoustic tracks, low-key acoustic tracks, should probably make you think. And I do admire its tenacity, but I'm just not moved by this. It has to do with the looping. It almost is like a looping, acoustic looping. You know, it keeps one after the other. Maybe I'm just too easily bored, and maybe I do need something like waving and flashing in front of my eyes.
I mean, it could be that. I mean, it's not to put too much of a focus on personal taste, although it can be an aspect of it. For me, I did get that emotional connection. I felt it. Listening to this song, especially feeling the way he's describing and being there, I don't know. I identified it on another level, but it could just be, again, to the other end, maybe I'm very easily engaged. Maybe once an emotional hook gets in me, it doesn't take much for me to go along for the ride.
The thing is, it almost happened really quickly with me. It was almost like it happened earlier than the first verse. It's like the intro was intriguing. It really was. But then it's like the second he starts singing, it's like there's some kind of written code that says, well, this music has to be kind of repetitive. It needs to fit a niche so his voice can be brought above it. But then that means that the lyrics have to stand out likewise. And I just feel like neither was done. You know, I don't know. It feels like the riff was just as dull. Even as beautiful as it sounded with the added piano, it feels like it was just as dull as some of the previous tracks.
I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say you're being nitpicky. I mean, moments of it sound nitpicky, but also, I mean, there are valid complaints within the repetitiveness, too, so I can't really argue that.
It's a very consistent feature in this album.
It is. It is, but...
It's hard to ignore at times.
Yeah, but I don't know. I didn't have that much difficulty embracing it. Anyway, why don't we move on to the next song, because I think there's not much more to say about Broken. We've been pretty concise with it. Stone in My Hand is another song that's a bit different from the rest. This starts out with a nice little kind of slow, plucky intro that goes right into a almost Western style guitar play. And this is the first time we really see a sense of somewhat of attitude in the album.
It's a little comedic in that regard. I mean, the intro is like borderline Renaissance era guitar.
Yeah,
you know,
it was actually kind of cool.
Yeah, it was. I actually probably almost would have preferred a whole song out of that. But it doesn't mean I necessarily dislike what it went into. I actually thought this was the most creative riff thus far. So far. It still was repetitive, but it was something different.
This was also probably... We're going to take Smokey Froggy and make it Smoggy. It was his best Smoggy voice.
Yeah, he did really bring it out in this one.
It really was. This is when I cemented that idea that he was working with.
It worked for what he went into, which was kind of like a Western theme sort
and
of
the
thing.
Story actually grew in depth here. The whole idea of defiance in the face of oppression. That's what it really boils down to for this song. You can kill our mothers, you can kill our fathers, you can kill our brothers and sisters, but I'll fight on with a stone in my hand. That anthem.
It's just a powerful lyric.
It's a great idea.
Keeping with the Western vibe, I mean, it's almost like that taking the law into your own hands out of necessity and strife.
You build your tanks, you bomb our cities. I will fight even if all I have is a stone. It's a very powerful idea. It's a very inspiring idea.
Now, here's the thing. And considering the riff, I welcomed the spice of this track. It had definite spunk to it. Which kind of made me forget a little bit that it was repetitive. So it's not. I'm not totally banking on that. Anthems are allowed.
And that's what this was. It was an anthem to not give up, to keep moving, to press on no matter what you've got.
But even then, it's just so straightforward.
Well, why does straightforward have to be bad?
No, it's...
Sincerely,
it's very on the nose.
It is. That's true.
It's not offering me any imagery that I'm enjoying.
Here's the thing. Good message, and a little bit quirky.
I'll even say great message and quirky. I'll put it at the
great message and quirky. Peel those two layers back, you're left with a very similar format.
Correct, but you're not peeling those layers back. They're there.
I am.
but my point is that you're taking the things out and saying, let's ignore the stuff that made it good, and then it's still the same.
It doesn't have the dynamics to be a great song, in my opinion. That's the whole thing. It's a good song.
Like, the piano packs a punch, but at the same time, it's just there.
Yeah.
It's a saloon-y style piano chord. Yeah, I get that. The kind of
All right, but consider, other bands out there that have decided to use that aesthetic to perhaps more creative ends, such as Steam Powered Giraffe in the 2 Cent Show.
Yes.
They master that style. This just kind of broaches it. As it's almost like looking at an aesthetic through a very, very narrow window.
Or instead taking something that you have and working to get the best you can with what you've got.
I mean, that's a very polite way of putting it. But again, this is a critique here. I can't be so. He gave it his best go.
But that's
it's been
not
around a long time.
No, I understand that, but we talk to potential and talk to all the time talking about we expected better of blah blah blah. We get into that a lot of how a window to talent we expect more and we rate more harshly sometimes when someone who we expect to achieve better doesn't. With this song, he's doing more than he's done so far as and it made it quirkier. But I think it's, as far as message goes and as far as emotion goes, this song is very strong. Right, great, no, but good at least.
Oh yeah, that's what I'll agree.
Yeah,
I'm saying
no,
it's the
yes, but
because of the lack of dynamics, I can't ever put something like this above good. Ideas are one thing, but there's just some ways you just can't get an idea across well enough. I mean, this does, from a sociological point of view, great idea. I love it. It's beautiful. It works great in an anthem idea. I just didn't feel like standing up and saluting.
That's probably it. It goes back to what I said before. You have to take these things with a grain of salt. Like, I want to like it, but there needs to be some other layer. It comes back to the same thing after a while. It comes back to heard it before. Know so many other bands who've done it. Know so many bands who've done it better. I feel like you're downplaying the comparing aspect. At some point, every critic has to compare.
Well, of course you have to compare, but also you have to look at it as it is on its own as well.
Okay,
I've addressed those things, those positives.
Here's a song that actually does it. Weakness.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, Weakness has a great story element and a great theme element in it. It is the destruction of a human being at its core. This is about a woman who has lived the terrible life.
It's rife with despair. It's about drugs taking over your life, more or less.
Weakness is a great name for this track. That's what it's about.
It conveys this gorgeous hopelessness, almost.
Yeah.
This.
We're working with the piano again. It's doing a great job of accenting the emotional score in this.
Compositionally, the intro to this track offered the most depth on the album, I think.
And
I'd agree with that.
In this case, we're actually getting a good build in the outro.
Yeah.
In as the verses go along, we're getting a really solid build. That is not to say it was perfect. There was an incomplete nature, and I figured out what it was. The story itself has no resolution.
Yeah, but
no, the resolution is that there is no resolution.
Yeah.
It's the fact that she will go out and do it all again. She's been down and out. She's been a drug addict. She's been a petty thief, former prostitute.
And if she got to do it again, she would have to do it again.
But it is a bit of a letdown.
I disagree.
Saved. No. That incompleteness, while I felt it the first time, reflecting on it actually fits the song, and I appreciate it for it.
That's what I was going to say. Okay. That incompleteness is part of it. You're supposed to walk away going, what? Wait, where? What? That's intended.
No. Sometimes life sucks.
Yeah,
at the end of the day, I'm going to agree with that. And I think that's a layer of complexity that maybe really does separate this track from the previous.
It does.
That's what we mean. That's what John meant by on the nose. Whereas this is not necessarily on the nose. It takes a little bit of a turn.
I wasn't discounting the on the nose. I was asking what's wrong with it being on the nose.
I like to think sometimes.
Okay.
Well, that's what weakness does. It makes me think about it. But
that's what
more.
I wanted. Yeah. Because just stating
Just
stating that something's on the nose isn't an explanation. It's a statement. Why is that bad? If you're going to say that something's on the nose, I want to know because I don't understand it because I like it for what it is.
Well, I thought that spoke for itself. But yes, it comes.
Not always.
It comes with a complexity of thought.
Okay.
Okay,
I think I got something.
It's like there's a reason why movies are not so straightforward these days. They tend to have lots of layers.
But things that are on the nose can be good too. Is all I'm saying. It doesn't make it bad. The nose doesn't mean bad.
Okay, I'm going to go with one of my weird metaphors. Black Jesus is tomatoes, lettuce, almonds, chicken.
I can't wait to see where this is going.
Weakness is a really cool, really delicious chef salad.
All right. I mean, well...
It's got all the same elements, but it comes
compare-
together so much better, and it has layers in its flavoring.
I don't think it's quite to the level of some other things out there, but yes,
Well, it's still a salad.
comparatively against those two tracks, yes.
Yeah,
I can see where you're going.
That's where
with
I'm
that.
going. That's why I don't like that on the nose kind of flavor. It feels more like reading a list as opposed to enjoying that meal.
So it sounds like that comes down to mostly taste at the core of it.
All right, well, look, you know, you could bring this to a deeper metaphor anyway. Like, when you're talking about... I just mentioned, you know, bad and good, black and white. I think for many, many years, black and white stories tended to be the most accessible and the most written, because, after all, they are feel-good tracks. I mean, it's feel-good tracks, feel-good stories. They're the kind of thing that are supposed to move you toward a positive end, perhaps.
There's a reason we had so many Nazi movies.
The epic.
Because Nazis are bad guys. They're the universal bad guys. You don't feel bad killing Nazis.
Yeah.
Now, we don't have those as our war movies anymore. We have... Or look at...
Because there's no... I mean, it's hard to find a figure, so... I mean...
You have the Vietnam, you have the Full Metal Jacket kind of war movie. That's very muddy.
There tends to be a lot of muddiness in the way we look at it. I think any enlightened generation should see that. It was part of what the Enlightenment was all about, is sort of taking these things and look, maybe we're going a little far for this, just for these two tracks here, but you asked, and we're answering.
No, that's fine.
When we say on the nose, that's basically
I understand.
what we mean.
Again, I'm not only looking for definition, it's more, not why is it on the nose, but why is that bad?
It's not, again,
It's not necessarily. Okay, so then
not that it's bad.
It's not that it's bad, but it's that perhaps it is not 5-star level for me. I think that's really what it comes down to. It's hard for me to accept that as the best piece of art.
And
when people
and that's what
he's not trying to be.
Right,
That's it.
exactly.
But after all, we're given a rating based on what we think.
Yes. I was just trying to understand because you guys use on the nose a lot, and I was just trying to find out if you're saying that's necessarily bad. Now that I know you're not necessarily saying it's bad, you're just saying that won't be 5-star work either.
There's a lot of ways you can use it. The whole idea of being so straightforward can be great for, like, say...
I was just going to bring up the play devil's advocate to that.
There's coincidental and ironic work that really you have to be on the nose because that's how it works.
Exactly.
And there's pieces like that. You go a comedy aspect, it's a great way to get the point across. But for serious aspects, it kind of devalues that humanizing effect for me.
Okay. So there you go.
I think that might be another way.
That's a specific explanation to you, and that I understand.
There can also be ways of phrasing things, really, really pointed ways of phrasing something so simplistic that it does reach everyone. That could be on the nose in a very positive sense, theoretically. I mean, look, these are just... You gotta look at things on multiple levels here, and I'm just saying that at the end of the day, one track worked, one track didn't, when you take all these things into account.
Talking about a track that doesn't work... Oh, children's story, track 7.
Well, look, you could go either way with this, as an audience, because I understand that, look, the description here is basically about the child who has gone astray and at the end of the day ends up shot. I mean, this is a very detailed account. It's not in a story, it's an account.
And it's a very dark track, too.
Yeah.
Very dark.
This thing almost wouldn't... I would barely see this written in a story rather than maybe in a police report. That's how detailed this thing actually is.
Right.
It's like, this is what happened, point by point, we're going to describe it to you, and he really doesn't skip a breath as he tells this. The thing is, he describes it in the meter of a Dr. Seuss tale, as John covered. And it's,
But the whole thing is, it's a little bit too fast for that sort of meteor, in my opinion.
It's strange, but also it starts as if from fictional kids asking Uncle Whitey to tell them a story, and he's telling them telling the kids a story,
But it doesn't have the pacing of a story. It has the pacing of an account.
This goes back to what I said as early as...
Of reading a police report is a great way.
And I think this goes back to as early when I said it back in The Sad Girl and Black Jesus, that this listing thing, this happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened. Like, where's the phrasing? You know, it's a little much to really grapple with. This is a song you cannot possibly pick up the story on a first listen. You really need to kind of follow along with lyrics and.
I picked it up on the first listen because it's a straightforward story.
Well, there's enough tag words that I was able to pick it up with.
Yeah, and you're focusing on the lyrics in this.
But at that point, you have to write off certain details as fluff.
And there's another big aspect I have that's wrong with this song. It was very, very jarring the way the music kept restarting. They would be playing chords, playing a melody. 2 or 3 beat pause, restart the whole thing, and it really wore on me very quickly.
And see,
it was really jarring, and I could not enjoy that.
See, I could almost accept that in terms of maybe moving the story along.
And see, that's why it didn't jar me that much, because I was focused more on the lyrics. I didn't notice how much it restarted.
To play devil's advocate, there's a bit of an art to storytelling. I mean, obviously everything, and we talked about this back in like episode 50, the 50th episode special, when we're comparing different art forms, and we talked a little bit about storytelling as an art form, and we actually had a little bit of a debate on, whether there really is only one way to write a story. I think we all unanimously came to the conclusion that there's not one way to write a story.
Yes.
So, but here's the thing. If you're going to do that, you need to phrase it in some manner that is approachable. And I'm just not on board with this manner of telling the story. It's not very approachable to me. It's very much just here's a bunch of facts, here's a bunch of facts, here's a bunch of facts. I'm not even sure I can really identify a moral of any kind, necessarily. So that stop-start nature that John's talking about really is it kind of hurts it.
And I disagree, and I'll tell you exactly why. Because the same reason why you think that it hurts it, the stop-start nature, and makes it ambiguous, I think it's supposed to be ambiguous. There isn't a moral. Who was right? Who was wrong? I mean, clearly...
that's not a bad point.
Obviously, the thief stealing from old people, mothers, sisters, brothers, that's wrong.
Sometimes
but the cop smacking the child, also wrong.
Oh, no. The song ends with the punctuating idea
of the cop shooting the child.
Shooting him after he dropped his gun. Obviously a big moral issue and something like that.
Yes.
And in my opinion had no impact emotionally.
And I disagree.
I felt nothing.
And I disagree. I think the way the story moved along, I felt that punctuation. The story was very focused. Yes, the music was kind of repetitive, and I noticed it more once you pointed it out. But the first couple times I've listened to this album, I was so on board with the story and the ambiguity of it that it pulled me through it.
Just to show you, I'm not trying to be a jerk here, not just to show you, because I actually do feel this way. You did make a very valid point there. I do think ambiguity is kind of an important theme, and it is a layer that in itself kind of isn't on the nose. So yes, alright, maybe it's not going to, grab me emotionally the way other songs about similar topics have, and make you feel for the character necessarily. The way he's singing doesn't make any pretense about that. It's not really designing itself to have you focus too much on that. It's really more about, yes, the ambiguity of life, and how sometimes this stuff just happens. People can be jerks, people can be prone to bad luck, and etc., etc., etc.
And I think what pulls John out of it versus pulling me into it, a lot of it stems from taste.
No.
I'm still saying.
No, you know I love political stuff.
No, I'm saying...
And this is actually a political song.
Well, I'm still concluding that the overall...
I have no idea why you don't like it.
Because you're going to be ambiguous about cops shooting a kid.
No, he's ambiguous about the entire story, not just that.
Look.
That is the exact opposite of idea.
John, I'm going to side with Matt just on this one, because after all, at the beginning of the story, the kid did start out as a thug. So there are definitely moments in the beginning of the story...
a pregnant woman. He's
not a protagonist.
No, that's the whole thing. The story is not just he's a bad person.
No, of course not.
Because he puts down the gun. Because he realizes what he did when he threatened that pregnant woman. In this story, he actually feels morose.
But
he
that's
feels
after,
remorse.
but that's after,
and everything like that. And a life he did not choose for himself. A life he was just led into. It's all about how... No, the whole story is about how we have a problem with people of less means and everything. No, that's what the story should have been about. But it's
No,
ambiguous.
okay, now I'm really disagreeing with you.
You can't say what it
you
should have
can't,
been
you
about.
cannot, you are not, you're not here to say what it should have been about.
No, that's what the story is about.
It's clearly not.
No, it's about kids without means being drawn into a life of crime.
This is a Law and Order story, and I'm sorry, but Law and Orders tend to have very tragic endings, and it's not always by the fault of any one particular person, but a cacophony of events that occur simultaneously. Had he not done something in the beginning of the story, perhaps he would not have ended up in the position where he was. I'm not citing on anybody right here, but this really is kind of just a facts and facts and facts. This happens.
And that's
it
why
happens every day.
And that's why it reads like a police report. Because it's supposed to be a list of facts.
Why would I enjoy a police report? There's absolutely no reason
It's an existentialist tale.
But at the same time, they're trying to talk about how this kid had no other means. How his friend was like, we're broke, we have no money, let's just go hold up an old person. And it snowballs from there. And there is still twinges as he's going through the story where he knows he's doing wrong. But he still has to keep doing because he has no other choice. And when he makes the choice to go away from the life of crime, he gets shot by cops.
Look, then if you're not satisfied with the existential side of things, there could very much be a, you reap what you sow. In some cases, repenting doesn't always fix problems.
No, that's great. I love that idea. The way it's presented, I cannot stand.
But you can still present that theme in a police report manner.
Yes, but I
look.
think
I want to conclude with here that yes, in terms of enjoyment, this is not my kind of song. This is not my kind of music. It doesn't really entertain me in any way. But I'm being objective and saying that as a work of art, this can stand. It can't be everyone's thing, and the fact that we're even discussing it for this long means it is kind of a provocative work of art.
And I'll say, I've heard the original. That's the way I enjoyed it.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah. In this statement, I just don't like it.
Okay.
Here's the thing. I do like things that make me think, and there's plenty of things on this album that really just does not make me think, but this kind of does. So, alright. Alright, we said what we were going to say.
Okay.
Moving on to Stay. This is this one has cliche themes as far as songs like this go, but it's about a broken relationship. It's about expecting someone to stay or trying to stay yourself, being involved in something that's over, way past its time. We've all had at least some semblance of experience with this in life. And it's a story that's been told before, but still, there's impact here. I think it's a beautiful song. It may not be as impactful as, say, Weakness, but it's definitely something that's relatable, and the lyrics are very approachable as well. I
mean, there are lines that stand out. I learned all I know from a fashion magazine. I respect where he's coming from. It's true, though, that there's really no shortage of songs that have tackled the same thing. Not to say, of course, yet again, that you're once a song has been done once, then the theme is off limits. But so yes, there are certain lines here that do make it original in its own way. But it's as I said back in Broken. Guy loses sight of himself, loses sight of love, can't quite return to it. I said this back in Broken, that is borderline, I could very much relate to these themes, there's probably a lot of people that have gone through this. Hell, I went through it. It happens. It does happen. And I want to be moved by it. I just know that I have personally heard tracks that offer a little more complexity. So again, we're going back to the complexity debate. A layer or something that puts a little more in perspective. This doesn't quite put it in perspective for me. It's kind of a bore. It's what I don't want to listen to, if that's what's on my mind. I want to listen to something that will kind of, spin it differently.
This was the most, maybe not my overreaching statement I'm about to make, but it was the simplest piano punctuation and the simplest tempo guitar on the whole album.
No, that's true. That's really true.
I might agree
Perhaps
with
there
that.
is something about that, of course.
I might agree that it was simpler than today, yet this was still way more engaging than today, I feel. Because I felt something from this. I still didn't really feel anything from today.
We're really speaking in abstract terms right now.
I didn't really... And you're right, it did have a couple of lines I enjoyed, but the rest of it was not even straightforward. It was just unimaginating.
It comes back to this.
Unimaginative. It wasn't inspiring anything in me.
It comes back to this. It's that coffee shop thing. It's like, here's another thing. I think there definitely should have been a female reviewer today. I really do. Maybe that's, I don't know, maybe that's a little bit of a sexist observation, but I think that would have helped.
A little bit? I think that's a lot of
that's
it.
That's pretty
why,
sexist.
unless you explain
why.
No,
I'm going to explain why.
Okay.
The three of us are, as much as we try, I don't think are completely objective in this regard. I think there's a lot more sympathy that could be had for this guy, especially coming from a female perspective. For instance, it's kind of a reach-out kind of track. It almost seems like, when you're singing about being lost from love for long periods of time, not quite being able to return to it, it almost is a cry for help in some cases. I don't think the answer is for a male to answer.
Yeah, but then that gets into a very specific thing about female and sexuality, and I mean...
And gender roles and everything.
Which is very,
I understand
very steep slope.
But this album has made no attempt to walk any kind of line.
That's fair. This is This
is very straightforward guy to girl, or guy to himself, venting.
You're right.
It's journalistic.
Okay, so from that perspective, I can see what you're saying. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's a possibility.
So, in other words, my sympathy is more like, well, man up, bro. Like, it's not a...
But see, I feel sympathetic to him, and I'm the
I
of that.
want to feel sympathetic. But again, there's been other songs that have put it in perspective in a manner in which I could almost understand the plight. This plight, it's just kind of like, I know people have been in this plight, and who have gotten out of it via other ways than this. Now, again, this is not pretending to be anything particularly layered, so maybe it is for someone, but it's a little dated for me in terms of the lovelorn track.
And I think you're just looking for more than is here, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm okay with what's here. I think this is enough for me.
And I think that's where me and Steve is coming from at the basic level.
You're looking for more.
No, not that we're looking for more. We're not okay with what's here. To be honest, there's just, we're not okay with how stripped everything is.
I'll just amend that slightly. I mean, silly thing is a bit of word choice here, but I am okay with what's here. It doesn't offend me at all.
Yeah, fix
I'm unsatisfied with what's here.
There you go. That's better.
Okay.
Yes.
Whereas I am satisfied, maybe not engulfed and completely engaged, but definitely satisfied with what's here. Moving on to the next track, My Medicine.
Okay. Character. There's definitely a higher level of character in this song, for it is a jaunty tune about drugs. Yes, jaunty drugs. It was interesting, and just for that aspect alone, it gave me a hook.
Alright, so sometimes all it takes is a small thing, so I fully respect that. It definitely, for, Jack be nimble, Jack be quick, it uses
the spoon on the candlestick.
Yes, it uses the fairy tale as a template for a type of drug kick, which is a curious choice. It's definitely curious. I was kind of waiting for a climax that never happened here. The chorus itself, I'm gonna buy my medicine. Yeah, it is jaunty. It's a little unclimactic. I think that's is more of a
But I think
that's almost a
with
nitpick.
a song called My Medicine about drug abuse. It's a face value track. It's not trying to be anything, but here's a song about drugs. That's really
yeah.
I will appreciate the fact, and you know what? Here's where the quote unquote on the nose lyrics is actually working in its favor, to really take the metaphor of a fairy tale and try to apply that happy-go-lucky feeling that you get in the Mother Goose fairy tales, or at least as how it portrays to your childhood, and applying it to the vapid nature of drug abuse, really does say something, and it does a good job in saying that. That right there, conceptually, great idea.
There's another curious idea. A specific lyric that came at some point toward the end. You can trust every word I'm going to tell you is a lie. I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
I want to know what that means.
I think it's...
If we think we know what it means, then that's really weird and deep.
No, I like that lyric. I think that's a lyric that makes you think, because it's kind of like, oh wait, huh? What?
It works. It works on
today's podcast is operating on a very superficial level. Does it make you think, or does it not make you think? Maybe
No. It does actually work on multiple levels. A fairy tale, in and of itself, is a truth told through lies. Drugs themselves, I mean, obviously, if you've ever seen anything about drugs, are lies.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
So it's very apropos
layer.
for the lyric and for the song.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I really like it for that.
And I went a different direction with the whole fairy tale thing. I mean, I just found it kind of ironic on the face of it, but maybe that was a shallow listen, so, I was like, irony, heh. But, oh well.
Well, no, it is ironic. That's the whole thing, but there's a depth to that irony there.
Yeah, it's not irony on a hipster level.
It's irony on an actual
ironic level.
No, an artistic choice level.
Yeah.
And I do enjoy the idea of bringing that. The happy-go-lucky plus fairy tale plus drug abuse gets across the message of the vapid nature in this song.
Right.
The vapid choices that happen along, and I do like that. I really do.
And since we have not discussed it, and we normally start discussing it by this time, I'm going to pose album arc kind of our unfortunate choices and unfortunate occurrences.
Yeah, I think
a lot of it is very much unfortunate. I don't think you can really choose any other word. It's
but
not
also
like
a lot
positive, negative.
And this is where the blues element comes in. A lot of Everlast songs are maybe not bluesy necessarily in sound, but in tone. It's a lot of tragic tales. He always writes a lot of songs that are... I mean, think about the song What It's Like. One of his biggest singles is just talking about life and being down and out and what it's like.
Yeah.
And that's why his first album is called Whitey Ford Sings the Blues. Like, I think he's more bluesy, not in sound, like as in performance.
Sound and style, performance, he's definitely R&B, which will have...
But definitely in the fact that the overreaching arc of most of his records are steeped in tragedy. And that's where a lot of blues comes from, too.
Yes, I follow that.
Well,
theme-wise, I think really what it comes down to is my issues are going to be more along the lines of, does the music make me feel it? And that occurs a little sparsely in this record, which is really
Let's
more
move on to our next track, Lonely Road. So this one was also a little cliche. That doesn't mean I didn't enjoy it, but it's your standard... missing someone, moving forward, carrying the weight kind of a song,
That sums up pretty much the whole song.
A lot of these tracks, though, also, is the way it kind of sums up. It's very... Like, I almost feel like we got this song already. That's what's a little weird.
We did. We got it in
And this time I don't just mean riff-wise, because if it had been riff-wise, I would have mentioned that every track.
Yes, except for the focus of POV. This song is all on him. It's talking about him carrying on and moving forward. Right. Whereas Stay, he's singing to someone else who's gone.
No, Stay is told from him walking away.
Oh, well, him walking away.
So he's leaving as well. I mean, it's the same idea.
Yeah, but he's putting, in Lonely Road, he's putting all of it on himself. He's not...
In Stay, he put it all on himself. He's talking about how he couldn't do it. I learned everything about love from a fashion magazine. It's talking about how he...
But in this, he's talking about how he's actually moving forward as opposed to not able to move forward.
Right.
Yes,
it's a minor difference, but it's a difference.
Well, you know what? Last week we harped on... why am I spacing? Goldfrapp for the similarities between tracks 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to harp on it here.
Okay.
The theme work is just... There's really nothing new.
It's not an unreasonable comparison.
And I know Steve is still burning over that
comparison.
I'm not
burning over that comparison. I think it's very... I mean, I do take issue... I believe that the variances last week were there. I believe they were a little more subtle, though. The variances between tracks. It's subtle things which grab me. They grab me 100%. In this case, they don't grab me at all. I was talking about Goldfrapp. In Goldfrapp, there were subtleties. Here, very little.
I mean, maybe less, but I still see minor differences, but I understand where you're coming from.
Of course there are minor differences. We've already noted the most standoutest tracks on this album. I'm sorry, but Lonely Road, especially as kind of a theme wrap-up, isn't really one of them, because tracks 11 and 12 are... Well, the first is a cover, and the second is a self-cover.
Well, they're all self-covers.
Yeah, well, they're all
Technically.
self.
Except
Yeah,
for
but it
cover.
goes back to the House of
Yes,
Pain.
Okay.
I understand what you're saying. Lonely Road seems like it would be the conclusionary
It seems
track
like it would
without
almost,
the
yes,
other.
the logical conclusion.
Okay.
Grandmother's Hand.
It's Grandma's Hand. And
Grandma's Hand.
this is
Excuse me.
a Bill Withers cover. So the thing about Grandma's Hand, and I know that because we got into this a bit off air, but how you guys feel that the other version, the original version, is better. My biggest defense of this song, and I'll start with it, is when I hear Everlast sing this song, I feel like he's singing about his grandmother, not a grandmother.
It does have a personal touch.
It feels
in the lyric work.
very personal.
But that
It's a
personal
misnomer
touch
for
is
me,
not-
no more or less
Yeah.
than Bill Withers. It's like the lyrics will speak for themselves
His
in that regard.
vocals work with this sort of idea, which is why he covered it. This is definitely something his vocals can do.
I think any
Whether or
vocals-
not he feels personally connected to it, he's going to feel personally connected to it.
Right.
I think any vocals would work with this thing, though. I
And
mean,
that's because of the gospel nature here. Now there's
There's a very anthemy.
I want to point out
Feel.
one big thing. There's some speeding up at the end of the verses that keep it from being a true gospel, but otherwise the pacing of the singing is just it has that
Clapping in church on Sunday morning.
that praising Jesus kind of emotion to it.
Just praising of any kind. It
Plus-
has that kind of
Plus,
praise.
there's some theme work of the church in here. Plus, I'm pretty sure it actually is talking about. I think it's talking about his dad's funeral. It's a little opaque.
Well, it's talking about
well, there's
also...
definitely religious metaphors.
There's
going back.
religious
Yeah.
metaphors, and there's a lot of defense. Grandma defending him against his parents, and
Well-
the things grandmas do sometimes.
Well, yeah, that's
it's
the thing.
a
If you
relatable
take-
message.
If you pull back the metaphor, there's a very simple thing here, and that's just it's an ode to his grandmother for both the coddling and the scolding.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
exactly. Grandma's hand can do kind and hurt,
yes, that is
And
that's
it's-
very sweet.
and I like it.
And it's bluesy gospel.
I understand where you're coming from, thinking that the original did more, and that's fair, and I understand it. But I like this version.
But
I'm gonna be selfish. I mean, Bill Withers is better because there's more soul in it. I like the
This-
bass. I like the warmer guitar comping. And I like the ninth on the very last refrain. There, I said it. I'm sorry, but this track...
This track was pretty. It was pretty.
It's a very superficial track.
When it burns it down,
No,
was
but it
pretty.
shouldn't be a very superficial track for...
First of all, gospel.
Okay, yeah,
The
it's not a
idea
deep
that-
theme, it's an ode. But
Well,
to
that's
be
what I
an
mean.
ode,
I mean, a superficial in the sense that it's a very maybe than face value is of a better word than superficial, but it's
Look,
it's
even
not trying
in-
to be anything else.
Well, even in Everlast's version, it was still gospel-y.
Yeah,
Right? So he did keep that element alive. But that's the thing. When you bring in the gospel element, you almost want to go full force. It's what we say a lot, or I say it a lot, go all or none at all.
yeah, but
You
if
know,
he had
like,
gone all,
or, remake it in your own way.
but if he had gone all out on this track, it wouldn't have fit on the record. No,
I'm not saying get a
then why
gospel.
choose it?
I'm not
because
saying
he
get a
wanted
gospel.
to do a version of it.
No.
It's
I'm
nice,
not saying
God,
actually
but-
get an actual choir to back you up on it. But a single person can do gospel music by themselves, and his voice can do gospel music.
Oh, well, what I was going to say is either do your own version of it. So
or go blues on it, because there was blues elements
That's
here.
right.
And he could have gone full bluesy, and it could have been very good.
When it comes down to it, is like, there's a realm of choices out there. An infinite way. My dad
I
used to
under-
say you're pulling from the realm of ideas, It was a
I
nice
understand
way
what
to
you're
put it.
saying. You're
This
saying
was-
that there's nothing. There's nothing that makes this version unique. It's just another version.
It's safe.
It's
a
safe.
safe
It's
version.
very safe.
Yeah, it's safe. It could have been rushed. Maybe it was just like, all right, I got the chords down. That's all you need. I don't
Could be.
know.
It's
I
hard
don't
to
know.
say.
But when you're rating covers, you do tend to nitpick. You have to nitpick.
Well, that's what covers are about.
Yeah. Either
Okay.
that, or you're just glad, like, yeah, Bill Withers. I mean, which I'm more prone to saying because I do love Bill Withers. So who knows?
Moving on to the final track of the record, "Jump Around?" ? This is a version of "Jump Around" by House of Pain that Everlast decided to take and turn on its head. Since he started performing acoustically, I've heard him say in interviews that he always gets asked to play "Jump Around," and so one day he's like, "Well, I wonder what it would sound like acoustic. Let's give it a shot." And so he did this. And I already know what John's going to say, and it's a fair argument, but I like that he named the "Jump Around?" in the title of the track. Before you even hear it, he's acknowledging that he's not sure if you'd be jumping around to this song. It doesn't have the same energy as the original. That's implied in the title itself. And then you listen to the song, and it's exactly what you think you'd get. It's a slower, acoustic, mellow version of Jump Around. The energy's not the same, and it's not supposed to be in this version. He did a flip on it, and I enjoyed it. Better or worse, I enjoyed it.
I mean, all right, we'll get into that in a bit. But first of all, I'll say that it was a relief because his voice was changed for once. Now, we haven't harped on this necessarily back to Sad Girl or Black Jesus, but there's been that consistency that we said at the very beginning of this review, where his voice is kind of really not waiting too much for range and meter, and it's got that accent to it, almost like Swedish chefy. Got 99 problems, but a bitch ain't word, yeah, that kind of thing. That's like there throughout the whole entire album, and here at least he's spicing it up with a little bit of reggae. It's like it's got a different tempo to it. Kind of appreciate that.
Well, right. Well, because that's how the original version flowed. So he's homaging that as well, I imagine.
I mean, of course. That's pleased. I'm pleased to hear it. I'm using this as a pivot to make a little critique about the rest of the album. Of course, it is the very last track, so it's clearly just an add-on. It might as well have been a bonus track. It's fan service at its best. You said yourself that this is.
Oh, it's definitely fan service. But it's also laughing in the face of the fans a little bit too. Let's see how ridiculous this sounds, and he liked it enough to actually put it out. But I don't think he feels it's ridiculous, and I don't either. But I definitely think he sees some irony in singing a song that's all about energy in a non-energetic way.
And that is the only reason I can accept this as a song. Because honestly,
still a song.
no, I can accept it for work. I can accept it. Everything else about this song just drives me nuts. Because it's depressing with some of the most most energizing lyrics I've heard. I'm the cream of the crop. I rise to the top. That's how he's singing. No, this is not what you do with Jump Around.
Well, it is his song.
I know it's an artistic song. I know it's his song. I know he can do whatever the heck he wants with it. I think he ruined it.
I disagree.
I will put that right out there.
Well,
I think he took a song that, to be honest, got me into hip-hop. If I could point to any song that got me into this type of music, it is Jump Around.
I mean, here's the thing.
But it doesn't ruin it, because the other songs still exist. The other versions still exist.
If what Matt is saying is true, then it's clear that there was a reason, and it was all for fan service. Is that there was a fan base that did want to hear this acoustic version.
And I know people like it. I can't stand it.
I'm going to agree with you that the fact of the matter is, people are dumb. People can be really dumb. I mean, yeah, play that, but do this silly thing with it. I mean, if it was for fans, then I respect him respecting his fans. It's just, from a critical perspective, it is a little weird. It's just weird.
I like weird.
I like weird too, but I like engaging weird. I like shocking weird.
Okay, forgetting the energy, it's got none of the complexity of the first song, which is what actually made it good. I
disagree that just the complexity made it good. I don't agree that it's bad without the complexity. I don't. You're allowed to feel what it is, and that's fine.
We are too closely comparing this against the original as its own track. This is as good or as bad as any other track on this album. It's not pulling away from those tracks. But if we're gonna talk about it against the original, I'm not sure.
I mean,
but
that's
maybe
at
I'm
the
on the
base
side
what
of
we want to do here, because we didn't do that with every other track either. We're trying to avoid it. As a song on its own, it works. If you're comparing it to the original and you like the high energy of the original one better, of course, then that's fine, and you're allowed to feel that way. But I don't think it ruins the original.
No, I'm going to talk about something else, because the first time I heard this song, I didn't even realize it was the original Jump Around until halfway through. That's how different it sounds.
I disagree.
No, the reggae still.
Actually,
I will say
that
his
original
voice,
trio.
His voice has changed a lot.
It doesn't. His vocals are are so different, and he's not the only one singing on the original.
But it's the words he's saying. Immediately I catch it.
But the tempo is so divergent. I'm not getting that beat to it.
Of course.
And until he actually starts going, kick up your feet and jump around, I didn't even recognize the song.
See, but I'm paying attention to the lyrics from the beginning.
We are absolutely sure that he sang the song originally, because it's hard to believe. It's hard.
Yes,
but here's the thing.
him.
Here's the thing. I was ignoring the song until I heard the words.
Okay.
Pick up your feet and jump around. If I'm ignoring a song for over 30 seconds of its introduction, oh my god. Oh my god.
Yeah.
I'm at this point in the album where I'm ignoring music.
Yeah, but that's my point, though, is that was you. You were ignoring it. You were done with the album. But I wasn't. So, specifically with this song especially, I think it's coming down to how we personally feel about this song specifically, and our tastes are influencing it heavily.
No, I'm gonna not rate on the fact that I think it's a travesty. I'm gonna rate on the fact that I ignored it for 30 seconds before I started listening to the song, and that's only when it emblazoned me to the fact that it took another song that I loved.
And that's perfectly fair, because I'm going to rate it as I was laughing the moment I heard it, because I couldn't believe it was an acoustic version of Jump Around within the first seconds.
I can't get involved in this particular discussion.
Me and Matt are going to start fighting about this, because this was really polarizing for us. I've
talked enough. You can go on with this one as long as
No. I really don't want to,
because it's not good. There's no conclusion. I like it. He doesn't. That's the base of it. That's it.
Yeah,
that's the end of it, and that's it. So, why don't you take us into the wrap up, Steve, for the album review?
Wrap up. I don't know.
That's helpful.
Well, I always start off cagey and then I find my way.
I know, because you're.
He doesn't like to get pinned down.
No.
That's right. You say you didn't like my Swedish chef metaphor?
No, not at all.
No, that was kind of reaching.
I really thought he sounded like that at some points. So well.
Nope.
No.
Oh, well. It wasn't a good or a bad. It was an observation. I like the Swedish chef, so.
I got it.
Stop being cagey.
Okay. Let's see here. I'm not against acoustic music. I want to make that absolutely clear, that we are not rating based on, oh, it's stripped down, I like the original, I don't like this, there's not enough going on. You know, that's my Valley Girl. It's thin for a reason. He made it that way. He wanted it that way for this album. Maybe he just liked to do it as an experiment, because after all, these albums, they tend to reach out to certain audiences, especially there's an acoustic niche, people that just love thin down music and like that coffee shop atmosphere. It feels a lot more intimate than when you're, packing it heavy with beats. I respect it for that. I've heard a couple of the originals just to compare and contrast. I have to say, when it really comes down to it, it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. A lot of this has to do with it has to do with the product at play. This is the product. This is what I'm rating. I just tell it like it is here. I think the problem is that a lot of these lyrics just don't jive very much with the music. The music itself barely reaches out to me emotionally. There's only a couple of instances. Broken, tried at the beginning, but then it just became too repetitive that it feels like acoustic looping. It feels like the kind of thing that just, when you repeat it over and over and over again, it loses. It feels like it's on a machine. Machines are not emotional. Even great techno music, even though they're made from machines, they tend to be made up for by being diverse, by offering more on a second by second basis. That's composition. There's very little composition here. This is a cut and paste method, it seems to me, versus through which you cram your story. Like you're stuffing it into a box. It's just, I unpack it and it's a mess. That's basically what I'm looking at here. 2.
Okay.
I haven't been this bored in a while.
I'm in the same sort of boat as Steve. There's a couple of little things I liked on this album. Sad Girl was sweet, but shallow. Weakness was beautifully sad. It really was. But still felt incomplete, and I explained how the incomplete actually worked. Weakness may be the best song on the album. I really did enjoy it. It progressed where none of the other songs did. None of the other songs really built. This one had an outro I can point at and say did well. It had a depth to it that very little on this album approaches. It was a great little acoustic song. It feels like that's the sort of song you do as to take it down a notch on a whole different album. Because the rest of it was just... He sounded good here, but that was all that was in the song. Broken had depth, but it really didn't bring everything together, and that's one of the other few songs that comes up to it. My Medicine, nice and jaunty, but to be honest, really repetitive. And, okay, Jack Be Nimble, Jack Be Quick, I like that fairy tale. Borderline cliche, not too much for me to really make it detract, but, like, you're just repeating the same sort of stuff over and over again. Yeah, great metaphor, but vary it up. That's the only stuff I can point to that engaged me. Yeah, boring. I was forgetting songs as soon as I was listening to them. I won't say as low as Steve, but 2.25. It's music, but there's nothing besides weakness. There's nothing I'm ever gonna want to hear again. Not because it's bad, or it's terrible, or if it's filling me with anger and wrath and all that stuff, except for Jump Around, and that's a personal preference, so I'm taking that out. But it's just, there's nothing here that I care to hear.
Okay. I mean, this is a polarizing album, I guess, and I mean, who knew an acoustic album picked at random because I enjoyed it so much would do this, but I don't know. I guess I can understand Steve's frustration with me last week a little bit with Goldfrapp. I get it now, and it just perpetuates to my quote that I haven't said in more episodes than I can count.
Not a matter of vindictiveness, though. You must.
I understand that, but my quote that you've said more than I have at this point because I stopped saying it after you started picking on me for it.
Let's all say it together.
Everyone listens to music differently.
That's so sweet.
And now you shouldn't feel bad, because we all said it.
Yeah. Well, this album really proves that, because, again, and not to say this ha-ha like, you guys are wrong, realistically, I've introduced this record to a bunch of people that I thought might enjoy it. And they really did, as much as I did. So, it really is the fact that no matter... It kind of almost aggravates me how futile listening to music is sometimes.
Because you mean trying to prove things to other people, sort of? Or?
Well, and the fact that even because you didn't like it as much, and you only gave it a 2, I'm rating it higher than that. And it's like, well, what's the point? You know, but it's that proof that the reason we have 3 people who listen to music very differently is to prove that even if we don't like it, you might. But this is our rating based on the way our minds work. And for Everlast, I mean... I like Sad Girl. I think it's a great story. I think it really pulls me in. It's a sweet intro. It really gets the record going. Black Jesus, yes, now the more that I listen to the lyrics, they are a little nonsensical, but I get into it because of the way he sings it. I feel passion in the way he sings the song, not so much what he says, but how he says it. Today is the only song that's always been forgettable. I only know it well because I've listened to this album 7, 8, or 9 times at this point, because I've been listening to it before I decided to choose it. With Broken... I think it's a beautiful ballad that drew me in. I found that emotional connection. I really felt it. Stone in My Hand might be one of my favorite tracks on the record. Because I just like the way it plays, I like the Western style, and I love the message. I just think it's a strong, solid message, and one of my favorite tracks. Weakness is definitely the most beautiful track on the record. Hands down, and probably the best made, regardless of being my favorite or not. Gorgeous Helplessness describes it perfectly. Children's Story... I still stand at the fact that it's trying to prove a point and convey a message, and artistically it does it well. It's not the best that's ever been done that way, but I think for what he intended to do with it, it hits the nail on the head. The original might have been a little better. I will agree with John on that. Stay. Again, I felt the emotional connection, not to the same extent as Weakness, but there was something there that I saw that you guys clearly didn't. My Medicine, we're all in agreement. Face value, it is what it is. It's jaunty, it's fun, it's good. Lonely Road, upon multiple listens, it is a repeated theme. I agree. Grandma's Hand, fun. The original has more depth. Still like it. Jump Around, like John said, difference of opinion. I think it's great. It made me giggle. It makes him giggle. He laughs at the beginning of the track. I like it for what it is. I'm giving it a 3.75. Not quite a 4, because again, it's not amazing. It's not completely original, but it's not average to me because I'm connecting it on a level that average music kind of washes over me.
I mean, it's fascinating. It's fascinating to see that. I think that's the largest disparity we've ever had.
Between two of us.
Yeah.
Any two of us, yes.
I like it. I think it's good. I think he could have done more. I think some of the original tracks were done better, but again, we're taking it for what it is, not comparing it to the originals. We should be looking at the album like the originals never existed. And that's why John didn't discount it further for the Jump Around.
In the end, I was doing that.
Right.
I mean, I like acoustic. Some of my favorite music is older music, and acoustic is huge into Southern rock, so I like acoustic. But I found more character in like the opening chords of Lola by the Kings than I found in most of this album.
And I just
it's just
and that's fine, and I understand where you're coming from, but for me, I connected emotionally with the way he sang enough that I was able to ignore the simplicity, to the point where when you guys were saying it was repetitive today, I didn't even notice it when I was listening to it.
You know, I don't know, maybe I'm just... It's a matter of being in tune with, what else is out there. Maybe relevancy was my problem. Not to say that the themes are irrelevant, but... There, again, when it comes to especially his manner of speaking, I'd be so much more inclined to, listen to Jason Mraz's work, which is straight up pop. Straight up pop.
And the funny thing...
it's so much more impressive to me.
And see, the funny thing about me is I can't stand Jason Mraz. All of his music irritates me.
I mean, he did reach a low point. I mean, at some point, his career did kind of spiral a little bit.
But we're getting off track.
No, there was a point where his wordsmithing was tip-top, really.
But here's the overarch. Because we could probably talk this album to death, and there's no need to do that. We've made our points and our bones about it. The overall rating is... This might not be worth checking out. As much as I want to say listen to...
No. The overall rating is if you usually agree with Matt... Check it out, buy it. No, it really is.
No, I'm going to just agree in general. It is worth checking out.
Yeah.
Just because acoustic music, for people that like acoustic...
It hits a primal level with a lot of people. Maybe
just the fact that it's acoustic will get you. I don't know.
Okay, that's a fair. On the overall, it's still worth listening to. Whereas I would personally buy it. Obviously, they would ignore it. But we'll leave it right in the middle anyway.
I will say this. I'm happy I heard it.
Okay.
I am.
So then it's definitely a listen on the overarching scheme of things.
I'm not going to go back to it, but I'm happy I heard it. Only because it was a little refreshing.
Also,
we go into all these different genres.
Right. And also, I think this will be the period at the end of the sentence here. We're all in our elements yet again. I mean, musically speaking, again, that's where I was coming from. Musically, there's not a lot to grab hold on to. It's, the repetition will always get to me. You can phrase repetition in a way that is really anthem-like and powerful, but when the whole song, and nearly every single song here, follows one format and just persists and persists and persists, it's like it's not very self-aware in the regards.
You're right, and John was very much right that some of the lyrics are good and they're good lines, but overall, the lyrics weren't anything super impressive. Whereas for me, there were songs that reached out emotionally that were easier for me to grab because I was focused on those bits and how he was singing.
So if you ignore music and ignore lyrics, you may still find an emotional center here, in which case, yes, it is rated highly. There you are. Well, I want to talk a little bit about genres.
Yes.
So
we keep going on.
So since Steve likes to point out whenever I push people and I promote and blah blah blah, Steve's been harassing us for over a month, maybe two now, to put together a list of genres as we remember them, our entire list of the catalog of podcasts, 64 episodes as it were before this goes up.
64 episodes minus the ones where we did not have reviews. That's still a lot of albums.
Yeah.
And I just figured this was an appropriate time considering we
haven't
reviewed
in all this
enough.
We've done a large
only 3
variety
episodes without reviews, so 61 different albums.
There you are. And I just thought I'd bring up something that's come up a little frequently. Occasionally, we'll come across an album, and, we might decide to categorize it, pigeonhole it into a certain genre. We'll do it without even thinking, just because that's what we've been trained to believe about certain genres. Or maybe we're just students of Wikipedia, and we just listen to whatever they tell us. Either way, there are definite meanings and implications that go along with each and every genre. If you ignore these, then maybe this is a meaningless thing to you, and music is music. Of course it is. But some of us like a little bit of a guide through the vast expanse of music, and genres do help us somewhat in that regard.
And this isn't the first time we've talked about genres, obviously. We've had other at-length conversations. And also, really, the reality of it is, as human beings, we want to quantify everything. Yes. Everything and anything. We do it with movies, we do it with video games, we do it with books, we do it with everything. So why would music be any different?
Everything must be categorized and put into a box so that it's easy to find for future generations.
It's for understanding. That's the reality of it.
And I would like to talk about something else. When we actually start talking about these genres, the order we're putting the words in is very important.
They seem to be. And as silly as that sounds, but,
the less
hyphens, slashes.
The less words that we say. If we say pop rock, it's a rock genre with influence of pop. If we say rock pop, it's a pop genre with influences of rock. Well, we're going to explain these as they come. The reason we're doing this, so we're just going to go through a select thing, whatever intrigues us most, whatever we're most curious about, what the other. Plus, we're gonna put. We know Steve remembers everything, but we're gonna put our memories to the test too.
Yes, this is putting your memories to the test, because of course we all had to revisit these albums. But the whole idea is that we will write down what we feel, and from our internal gut, from no source, what the genre of our particular band is. So if you want to play this little game, you can follow along. It does require a little bit of backlogging through our podcast archive. It's right there at the top of the page. Click on it, go to the episode, and use Spotify to just check out the album yourself and tell us what you think it is.
Let's use this as an example because it's an obvious one that we'll all have the same for, or at least I think we will. So I'll start with it. Godsticks is obviously I Have Prague.
No, I did not stop there.
See, I didn't want to get overly specific, so maybe it's not as obvious as I thought it was.
It's grunge prog.
See, and I didn't do that. I just did prog because the grunge falls within it.
I was a little more specific. Melodic prog.
Okay, so then it wasn't as obvious as I thought.
Well,
okay,
grunge has melodic nature.
Well,
that's true.
That's true. And the thing is, it's not to say that prog itself doesn't have a melodic nature, but there seems to be other emphasis on prog itself, and that is the overall form of the song. In other words, you can have a brief melody, and then it's almost like, okay, Rush Pepper, let's get to the next phase.
See, that's funny.
In this case, they're very adherent to that melody. It's a binding theme throughout the track, despite how many things they go through. So it felt like an appropriate way to categorize them.
And it's funny because I thought that there was no way anyone was going to put anything but prog because Steve at length mentioned this is a prog band. We should listen to this band.
There you go. To me, the melody is exceedingly important, but there may be other people who could just listen to this band and be like, it's got elements of prog, but
no, that's a big thing for me. I cannot just put one word to most of the music we've listened to.
See, I did because I wanted to see if I could oversimplify.
Some of them I did. Some of them I did find simplifications.
Very few.
Oh,
we've talked about this before.
We reviewed a lot of pop records.
Well, there's a lot of records with elements of pop. And I'll just say right out there, Matchbox 20's North, kind of in one of her earlier stuff, this is pop rock. And I think this was almost straight up pop rock.
Episode 11. We should say these episodes. Episode 51. Well. Yeah. Just to follow along, help you follow along. Episode 51 was Godsticks. Episode 11, Matchbox 20, punk pop.
Punk?
Little bit. Little elements in a very, very post sense
that
of the term. That might be the
first time I heard punk and Matchbox 20.
Me too, yeah. I don't get that at all.
There's a bit of an attitude complex here. Maybe that's a little shallow.
But the attitude I thought came more from an R&B standpoint even. Because one of the songs was an all-out R&B song. More or less.
I admitted the pop element, but it's just
more pop rock.
That means we might disagree with the influences we're drawn into that variety.
Maybe. See, and that's funny. All right.
For me, punk is a very pervasive thing throughout a lot of modern pop music, and that includes rock itself, even subtly, just because it was such a powerful movement in the '90s. In which case, you get that attitude. There you are.
But the closest Matchbox 20 has ever gone to punk, in my opinion, is Unwell, which is an easy listening pop rock song.
Not true, actually. Busted off the first record is...
Oh, strike that, yes.
Yeah, is a very kind of punkish song, but that's old. That's funny.
Yeah,
anyway,
really.
okay, so I guess it's clear that me and John both thought something that would be very obvious and wasn't. So Steve,
I gotta find something that's...
at some point.
I gotta find good...
This is kind of actually very interesting.
Now I'm adding it to the list. Punk is getting added to the list for a quality punk album. A new quality punk album.
Well, we don't know that yet. If you don't disagree, it doesn't agree for you.
I gotta find one.
Anyway, all right, Steve, pick one.
I'm going to go with one of the ones that you mentioned earlier, because the more I think about it, it really does intrigue me. Really way back. Episode 5. Korn.
So for Korn, I put dubstep metal. Dubstep/metal.
Okay.
Okay, I have electronic metal.
Oh, we were close. I got electronic new metal.
Oh, see, I didn't do new metal because it didn't feel as new metal as their older stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had a comparison.
I feel like this took a step back in metal.
This is another interesting one because when you look through that particular lens, when you're at a point where you're immersed in the new metal universe, then yeah, you look at something and be like, well, that's not that new metal. They pulled back from that. But for me, it's still there.
Well, because also for me, I'm a diehard Korn fan. I've always been. I've justified records that everybody written off because I really like Jonathan Davis' singing style, and I've always been very into them.
What was it again? Dubstep
metal.
Dubstep metal.
But I felt that one was less new metal.
And I will say that dubstep is probably better than electric.
You know, I'm almost.
Skrillex worked on it. All right,
yeah.
The fact that Skrillex worked on it, therefore, means dubstep. But then again, dubstep to me is a little more cut and dry. Remember, dubstep is it's like electronica for idiots.
No, I refute that, and I'm a little offended by it.
Oh, come on.
It's
really simplified.
It's not that shallow. No, it's not. I will refute that. I would
defend that until you've heard more. That's a very sweeping statement to make.
To hear Skrillex is
specific artists.
It's like
because you can't cite. Neither can I.
I'm thinking
artists. Knowing Skrillex and Deadmau5 is just it's like knowing Katy Perry and Bieber and calling all of our music of our last century.
You know that party rocking at your house tonight? All of us are having a good time.
Yeah, that's not dubstep.
That's not dubstep.
That strikes me as a lot of dubstep.
It's not. None of it is that.
That actually.
That's not dubstep.
That's very straightforward.
That's a dance song. It's not dubstep.
You gotta remember, in electronica, in synthesized work like this...
It is a little trancy.
No one will call LMFAO dubstep. Not in a million years.
And nobody will call Deadmau5 trance. Ever.
That is lost on me.
Yeah. He's a popular dubstep artist.
Wait. So
interesting.
I've got one that we'll all agree unanimously,
I lost that round.
And I'd be curious to see that we don't agree unanimously on this one.
Okay.
Chicoria is jazz.
I did not keep it that shallow.
I did.
Jazz.
We agree.
Okay.
I wrote down jazz with 4 Z's on purpose.
Oh God!
I hate you.
Okay, come on. You have to try to use some semblance to fit in a niche here.
Yeah, no. There's it's hard to say that it's anything but jazz. And not
the reason I'm sure there are jazz artists there who might actually have our heads for this.
Immortal jazz.
But the fact is, I've just learned that each and every major jazz artist, really major jazz artist, and Chick Corea is easily one of them, that has come on the playing field, has a style that is so unique to themselves, so incredibly unique, because it relies so much on improvisation, just straight from the brain kind of stuff.
Right.
I mean, how could you call it anything but their own style? Of course you know that it's jazz, but that's about as far as you could go.
Yeah.
The only thing I might narrow this a little bit down, because we are talking about the Vigil specifically. This is episode 57. Maybe space jazz, just based on a couple of the tracks in there, which got very, very spacey. And I think I did actually read that somewhere, so I may not have entirely unbiased here.
So I mean, we can go through more of these, but
we got a little bit of time.
No, I got one that I think is actually going to be hard for us to define because it was a hard album to talk about to begin with, and that is Serj Tankian's Harakiri.
I just put it as straight new metal because he still fits the new metal format like System did. So for me, that was easy.
Episode 21, I agreed. New metal.
Yeah.
Straight up new metal. And it's purist. There was nothing added here. This is him and his...
And
it is a flexible thing, though.
We talked about it at length of the way he was evolving his music in that album. In fact, you're the one that brought it up, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually put down experimental metal. I felt that it really was starting to push the boundaries. That it wasn't just new metal. There was a lot of differences.
The experimentation, I think, was more about there was a little bit of genre blending there, but not quite enough. The thing is, Serge Tankin's style, I almost am going to put him on the level of, like, one of the jazz guys just because his style is so unique, so incredibly unique. It's pervasive. It actually supersedes whatever he was incorporating. And I just hear Serge Tankin, in which case I know that he's one of the progenitors of...
And that was the thing about...
variety nu metal.
Yeah, and that was the thing about nu metal also, is bands like, at least in the early stages of nu metal, Korn, Linkin Park, System of a Down, Disturbed, these are all bands that if you were in the nu metal scene and you heard them, you knew it was them. They had an identifiable sound that was uniquely them, and that's what made it nu metal versus metal. A lot of metal bands sounded the same, but nu metal bands had a distinct sound to themselves. Like, for Disturbed, it was the lead singer, hands down. His voice was completely iconic. With System of a Down, it was their kind of sporadic, experimental nature.
There are things to some of these prefixes which do actually indicate that, they are not so much in a box. Certainly, alt would be one of those things. Yes. I almost am on the line of saying that nu, N-U, for metal is the equivalent of saying alt for like rock.
Alt rock.
Some people may disagree.
I think that's a fair assessment,
but
though.
I do think nu metal requires a little bit more adherence to form, while also kind of shredding, kind of showing off in the interim. That's what I say on that.
A fair assessment.
And that's where I'll
that's
say
what Serge
that,
does.
Yeah, but there is differences and divergence from just that, where I gotta say, he was truly experimental in that case. It was definitely metal. It's hard to call it anything but metal. But I wouldn't even say that it was close to what System was doing. It was closest to System, but it was still very unique.
Alright, I got one.
Yes?
Let's try Garbage. Episode 28.
I got it.
I have to find it.
We should say up front, these are specifically the albums that we reviewed. In this case, not your kind of people.
So this one I was actually struggling with. As a Garbage fan and knowing their entire discography, I remember songs from that record, but the record as a whole I couldn't remember. So it was a cop-out. I put techno rock.
I didn't remember any techno in it.
Oh, you definitely copped that.
So what might have been?
I don't recall anything.
So what
I barely remember rock in it.
So what it might have been for me is most of their back catalog was techno-y. It had that kind of, fast beat rock and kind of electronic.
If I was going to say anything, it was garage rock, but it was popified garage rock. It was pop garage.
Garage garbage? Garbage garage?
It was garage rock. It really was. And it was maybe that little that techno stuff, the electronica stuff, that's where I see pop influences going forward.
Well, that garage thing I did notice, and that's why I actually called it straight up indie. I think in many ways, pop indie music, and alright, let's just analyze the term here, just because some of us may have thrown the word indie around in a few of these, I'm not sure. But indie's a very popular term, almost as easy to throw down as alt these days.
I feel like...
And there is a distinct difference, and I do think indie is a lot more formulaic. But at the same time, a little bit edgy. I do think indie, in many ways, really is modern rock. It is, like, you hear a modern rock band, you really don't know how else to place them, but they're not, they're not trying to filter in crazy instruments or abstract themes. They're really just straightforward rock. Fun, easy to enjoy, with a good hook, and I think Garbage fit that niche.
Yeah,
in which case, my idea of indie is very much the opposite of what indie probably originally meant.
Well, what's funny about that for me, and probably why I put techno rock, is because all I could remember is the Garbage albums that I really remembered, which was their past catalog, which wasn't very indie. Yeah. But
I'm just being a term stickler here.
Yeah,
it's more like, okay, when everyone goes indie, when everyone and a lot of people went indie, it was almost like the thing to do.
My biggest.
Then what is indie?
My biggest issue with indie, though, is to me indie was a confusing term that I compared to prog. Not so much that it's like prog,
but just nothing like prog.
But let me finish my sentence. Prog to me was a term until recently that I didn't understand, so I just assumed that prog is an overarching thing that other genres could fit into.
It's also because of the hipster scene and how closely both styles of music are associated.
That whole indie as opposed to be independent. Yes. Independent label. I understand that. It's just the term has gotten skewed over the years.
Right. Yeah,
and I'm going with the skewing in this case. I'm not being because we know that independent labels are absolutely meaningless anymore. You can be on an independent label and still be doing your own thing. It's not like a specific genre of music anymore.
We've talked about a couple of different bands that have done that are very different from one another.
I think alt has actually become a little bit more of the we're stepping out of the box. Indie's no longer out of the box.
That's fair.
I do have... Okay.
I mean, not good, though.
Our next suggestion... This is a band that's always been hard for me to define. And I'm kind of curious if anybody's actually put a label on them. And that is Muse's Second Law.
See, I just put straight rock, because we talked about how, at length, they were one of the only... They're like one of the only big rock bands left.
I had a very clear word to add to that. I mean, I understand why you say that. Their early work for sure, I don't think I would have disagreed at all. Because they don't fit that indie niche for sure.
Yeah.
They're modern rock, but they really do, rock in its purest form. But this album, poof, as well as maybe their previous album, symphonic rock.
I had close. I couldn't even use the word rock. This was electric epic. It's hard.
You got abstract on us. Interesting.
I didn't want to define Muse as rock because it's rock at its core, but it's the super genre of rock, and it's hard to find.
They did have electronic elements in that album. For instance, that
symphonic electronic.
One of the early tracks in that album had that special bass. I don't even know what to call it. I'm not sure the name of it.
The special bass.
The bass that actually uses a bit of a touch screen and functions as the whammy bar. That's that wah 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 wah. That sound
Madness.
Madness. That was it. And yes, that has an electronic element. But to me, that's not a pervasive thing throughout the track. No more than any other album that is released today.
No,
of course, everything has some electronic element.
I agree. Symphonic is a more appropriate word, but I can't use any word but epic. Just because style.
Now, stylistically, there's something about that album.
There's like an ode nature in half the stuff they do.
A film nature.
Yeah.
It's cinematic.
And rock cannot come close to me to touching that.
Well, that's why I went with symphonic, because in many ways that's the perfect way of saying that it's not a movie. There's no movie attached to it, but there is,
There should be.
That's the way people feel about a lot of old symphonies. So
I still think Muse is a band that could make a very strong composer for soundtrack competitor. I think that they could compose for a movie very easily.
Since you said so, let's go. I actually want to do both of these. Not all three of them, because we did 3 soundtracks, actual soundtracks. And of course, aside from unless you're going to say soundtrack. Is anybody else going to say soundtrack for these?
I have other words. I know which one you're talking about.
Oh, I thought you actually said I have other.
Well, because you can't. If you're referring to Wreck-It Ralph, it's too various. Like you can't.
It is various because of the early tracks.
Yeah.
But once the primary movie music that actually was written for the film begins,
electronic.
Synth soundtrack.
All right, I guess we are doing all 3 then. I wasn't going to count this because I thought you were going to be more on board with this.
Well, again, it's too various. I don't think you can really classify Wreck-It Ralph because of that.
Taking just the original work, I can't see it as anything but a synth soundtrack. I wouldn't even count it as a score.
Wow. Here's the one I was going to leave out. I went with... I didn't expect to get all these words, but 8-bit?
No, there wasn't enough 8-bit in it.
All of it wasn't 8-bit.
Then I'll continue with the words. 8-bit revival techno.
Now I think you're just doing drugs.
Oh, come on.
Revival?
You said weirder.
Where's the word revival come from?
Revival comes from... Well, first of all, that's used in a lot of things. It's used in a lot of things to... In my opinion, not to say, post this or neo that, which are 2 completely different words, which mean it's like the way in which this would be perceived now. In my opinion, revival harkens back very closely to the original with artist's choice degree of updating it. This was trying to fit a time period. That was half the theme of the movie, was to be back in that old school video game. It was an ode to video game music, and 8-bit is pretty commonly used to
evoke that feeling.
To evoke video games, period. So, and I threw in techno at the end because I admit there was a little bit more playing around being done, just to cop out on the revivalist a little bit. So, okay, then let's go to the other soundtracks. First off, the actual video game soundtrack, Halo 4.
So where was
Episode
that?
30.
Neil Davidge.
Right.
Davidge. Davidge.
We think.
Davidge.
We don't know.
He said the best song didn't come from him. You see, this one I could not call a score either. I called it an orchestral soundtrack.
I just said
I couldn't-
classical.
Classic.
Nah,
You
definitely
can't
not
use that
classical.
almost in any modern.
Yeah.
Even John Williams. You can't say classical. Even as
So-
hearkening to
so modern
classical as he
classical?
does.
No, it's not classical.
Oh, so it's just...
If anything, it's probably closer to the romantic, if I remember correctly on your definitions.
I don't know.
This
You
is
know,
a ways back, but I think I remember,
That would perhaps hearken to romantic. There were romantic themes within that.
Yeah.
Then I was just unaware of the rules.
I was a little more general with this, though, to be honest. This one, I didn't get crazy. I simply said symphonic action soundtrack. In other words, evoking actual action themes. In other words, there's not very much other
Yeah.
way to describe it. Like that
Halo
was
does
invented
that.
by the film. This is not a matter where, like, oh, the music came first and then we have to, decide it afterwards. This was like the film developed the
mean
action
the
style.
game?
Oh,
The
sorry.
game.
Yeah, you're right. Well,
The
no.
game.
I do actually mean, though, the film began it, because this game models itself off action films and
Yeah,
sci-fi
that's true.
films in that way.
That's true.
So,
It has become
Films-
sort of the idea of the classical science fiction
Right.
action movie.
but in that way, I can't really separate it from the kind of thing that would be in action film. The
Okay.
soundtrack, to me, is right there in that niche.
Okay.
It's a thing of itself.
Speaking of an action film,
The one I chose, which was... I've realized I chose 2 of the 3 soundtracks.
Yes, you did. I haven't
So
delved
the
yet.
other soundtrack, of course, is for Pacific Rim, which was another somewhat polarizing review by
That was a little
Ramin
bit,
Djawadi,
Ramin Djawadi, episode 55.
a more recent one. So this one, I mean, because of the Tom Morello influences, I remember most of it being fairly straight rock. Just kind of straight rock, or maybe even metal.
This was my craziest. I'm going to warn you right away. Everything else I was pretty simple.
rock orchestral score.
Rock orchestral score. I can get on board with that.
That makes sense.
Mine is a lot crazier.
Yes.
Let's hear it.
You ready for this?
Yeah.
Rock / techno, because there was an equal mix of both.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it was rock, sometimes it was techno. Rock / techno infused symphonic cinemascape. And I have reason behind each and every one of these.
I understand every single word, but you told me not to go that deep.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah,
no.
you did
I
tell
said
us.
you could use one of them. You can use a hyphen, you can use a slash, and you can use
A comma.
two or 3 words. And I think and a quote. I went through all of them, but only for this one. There are many others, and I think that's going to be my next one. Is something much simpler.
Okay.
Uh,
Talking simple, and I
well,
know
let's-
everyone's
let's-
going to be disagreeing with me on this one, and it's
I
one
just-
that
I
we
just-
all liked. Steam Powered Giraffe, 2-cent show.
So this, I mean, I couldn't think of what to put it as, so of course I wrote steampunk, even though we had a length discussion about how there's no such thing as steampunk music.
It's only an idea.
Right. The reality of it is that
I like that.
2-cent show, I couldn't really think of how to quantify it because there were so many different sounds. So
Let's try to say it up front. Episode 39, 2-cent show. Steam Powered
so
Giraffe.
so I said steampunk because of the fact that steampunk's an idea, not a genre.
And
the
I
fact that they're
understand that.
The fact that it was all over the place, I felt summed it up.
I
You know-
think because this feels like sort of a new idea in what they're doing, just the steampunk idea is a new idea. First of all, I started alternative southern rock. That's the closest I could do.
That's weird.
Or alternative folk. I could not decide between the two. Or, to be honest, alt folk rock.
It wasn't as southern though to me. That was the
There's
word
some
that did not
elements-
jump out in that album.
There was a couple of elements.
There's
in it
western
that-
elements, but not southern elements. They're different, subtle but different.
I want to
Yes.
go back to one thing quickly. Just back to steampunk. Because it's curious that you went there, and I almost thought, when I originally made this, I thought that would have been the cop-out. But the more I think about it, because it is an idea, that's no different than saying, let's say last week when I mentioned Impressionism, which was born out of art, like a visual art movement, and then it was incorporated within music. That's no different.
And this band incorporates a visual art. They're all stage performance. Completely.
Steampunk is an aesthetic, a dress style. It's all these things, and hell, now it's music.
Yeah.
And they did that. So that's a very valid point. I went something a little more specific, and it was based on what we talked about in the episode. Not so simple. Vaudevillian folk revival.
Vaudevillian, I see. Vaudevillian, I see, definitely.
I was, instead of alt, I was thinking vaudeville, but I was going to say vaudeville.
See, but
folk
I just
rock.
didn't really get a solid
Not
feel
enough
of folk.
Not enough rock to me, though.
There was not enough
interestingly.
folk either, though. There was some.
What are you talking about? There was a lot of folk.
Yeah, but there was also a ton of pop and Western rock.
But then why are you arguing
Western
about
rock?
Western
I mean, that's
rock?
a weird one.
Well, what
Yeah,
do you
West-
call
no,
automatonic electronic harmonic?
I mean,
It was very Western sounding.
yeah, I understand what you're saying. Western
That's where
sounding.
I'm starting to hear Southern in it.
Yeah, but that's not the same thing.
I don't know where Western comes from.
Just
I
to
don't know
interject,
what Western
this
rock
is exactly what I wanted to happen today.
Yes.
What's Western rock?
I don't know. I don't know what Toussaint
How is
Show
it different than Southern? Because I
love
think
this
you mean
conversation.
Southern.
Southern is more like Leonard Skinner. Western is more Johnny Cash.
Johnny Cash is not Western. If anything, he's Southern folk. Southern rock. Eventually becomes Southern rock.
You know,
Yeah. Progenitor to it, if anything. So, yeah, your Western is Southern.
Okay, I guess that makes sense then.
but he's also country.
Yeah.
Kind of more country than anything
Yeah.
else. And I think country is really that Western thing. Because
Yeah.
it was the original country.
Yeah.
Before country music became, Dolly Parton. You know?
Yeah.
That's what it used to be.
Not that there's anything wrong with Dolly Parton per se.
Oh, yeah. I made that sound just to kind of like, it's a different thing.
I think this is because I think if we keep going, we're just going to list everything, and that's
Okay.
not the point of
Okay,
this.
No,
just to be
I,
straight up, Rex Markley is a folk song.
No, that's fair. That's
Okay.
true. Okay.
Alright, then,
2 tickets,
everyone pick one. Last round.
Okay. So for me, this one, because I don't even have anything for it, so I'm not even going to be in it. But I'm picking it because I want to hear what you guys picked, because I couldn't put a label on it. They Might Be Giants. I have
Okay.
nothing.
That one was surprisingly easy for me.
Really?
what'd you get?
I only made one little variation, but alt new wave. New wave.
Okay.
This is very, very close. And
I
new
can
wave
see
was a
that.
style. This is not, some BS thing. This was
No, I can
this
see
was
it.
a genre attributed to
No,
a lot of
honestly-
the rock bands that came out in the early 80s.
You know-
Say the experimental ones?
They were experimental for the time.
Okay. I put down experimental alt rock.
I mean, okay, if you're thinking in early 80s terms.
Yeah.
But now, not
No.
really.
No, now-
They're not that crazy today.
I'd say-
So why I said alt new wave, just to create a variance on
And I-
that existing style.
And I can see that, and honestly, because of the, you know what the song kept me from being able to figure out what genre it was?
What?
The song we love best.
Darlings of
Loverland
Loverland.
is so hard to just identify, because it hits so many things. It's such a great song, but new wave, an alternative new wave, does really characterize it quite well.
There's the thing with new wave is that quirkiness often goes with it. A lot
And
of
that's-
Blondie's stuff was quirky.
Well, yeah, a
Um,
flock of seagulls.
Especially for the early 80s. I think it had to do a lot
President of
with...
the United... No, not president.
It had to do with like a movement that was an answer to a lot of the really serious, deep stuff coming out in
Yeah.
the 70s. Like, the 70s was entrenched with psychedelic rock and prog rock. And actually, one of the critiques at the time was that music was inaccessible. A lot of people, who had grown up with 1950s and 60s stuff, looked at the stuff in the 70s. They're like, what are you doing to rock?
I totally get that, considering I was not a huge Pink Floyd fan. I was
You
not
are.
a huge Led Zeppelin fan. So I get that.
So imagine what they would have thought
Yeah.
when the early 80s came around and these bands started doing this upbeat, fun, quirky, silly, they dive into all that stuff.
Yeah.
That would have been exactly in your realm.
It's funny, this reminds me of... The genre talks remind me of an artist who I really want to do an album review for, but he hasn't put anything out new recently. But Andrew W.K. Andrew W.K. is a guy who does mostly heavy metal style music, but 90% of it is so upbeat and happy, which is not really a thing that metal often does. So it's kind of, he's always taken an interesting spin on metal. So for a later episode, if he comes out with new work, I would love to do an album of his. Anyway, okay. So that was my pick. Well, what about you, John?
Sigaro. Kvekker.
Sigaros.
How did you-
Episode 60.
I just put it as metal.
No. I could not get on board with metal.
I'm surprised you picked this, considering that I thought we discussed exactly what it is, and it's fairly decided upon, so this is a cop-out for me, because I did actually know going into it. Post-rock.
Oh yeah.
We discussed this.
ambient / post rock.
I actually forgot and thought we were referring to someone else's post rock.
We may have come up for something else, but I chose Sigur Rós because they're almost the poster child of post rock.
Yeah,
poster child.
Your puns
I love it.
are
They
not
hurt.
getting any better.
No, they hurt.
That's
No.
okay.
Okay.
I'm okay with that. But
I know you're
yeah,
okay
needless
with
to
that.
say, post rock. There's a definition attributed to
Okay.
it, and it tends to be that style of
It
guitar
was-
playing.
that was all
that
my
very
memory.
fast tremolo, using a guitar as a soundscape.
And
Nearly the tapping levels.
And the funniest thing about that though is that I was so on point with so many of the ones further back, and yet that one I couldn't remember post rock. I hate myself. Moving on. Okay, last one.
I'm getting very close to that. I mean, in chronology, right before it, Blue October.
Okay, this one. Pop sadcore.
Wow.
I had no other idea. Because honestly, I forgot most of the album.
No, Sadcore's
No.
not bad. That's really not bad. I was a lot simpler with this. It was one of my
I
simplest.
just did pop rock. Yeah.
Pop rock.
Because that's what it is at its heart.
Theme work keeps it in that idea of him sadcore.
Yeah.
I would equate the theme work to be in that same sort of vein
Yeah, but
of what
this-
he created.
But the music is very much just straightforward pop rock with a little bit of hip hop influence.
And it's like
That's
John
it.
said in the beginning, when you're
That's
doing
him.
in the order
No.
of
It's the
words.
same thing.
Nah, they had more metal elements in the style of guitar play and stuff. There was more metal elements to that.
Interesting. Well,
Maybe.
only toward the end of the album
Yeah.
did they kind of like fluctuate a little bit. But again, we're being a generalist here, and the order of words is kind of important, as John
Yeah.
said in the beginning. Pop, rock. In other words, we're really defining the rock thing primarily as pop because that's the way the English language works.
Yes.
So
Hence
I think
pop-
rock
Pop
is
sadcore
predominant.
for me.
Oh yeah.
Everyone really
It's mostly rock.
for
There are
predominant.
only a couple
but
songs
it's
that
just
have the
it's
hip-hop
very
influence.
formulaic and very accessible.
Yeah.
For that reason, it is pop. There we go.
There you go.
Okay, so this was an interesting experiment. I mean, I like how it
We
just
all tried to. Okay, first off, we all tried to pick the ones that the other persons can't get.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, also
What did you think of this?
the thing
What
about
did you
this,
think of
as we wrap up, the thing about this is
Way to be jaunty.
that? Yes, we are.
the thing about this as we wrap it up, and even though the theme has been spoken to death on this podcast, it further really proves that memory and impression and taste
Varies from individual to
and
individual.
we really do hear different things sometimes, and we'll find things in songs that
We heard different things today. We've heard different things in the past.
The topic of today is variance.
it's really it. Yeah. So, Steve, before we completely wrap up, why don't you give us a spam email of the day until we get real fan mail?
Spam.
I like that. You got to do that from now on.
That's it.
I think I
It's
do.
decided. Anyway.
However, adhering to few options are in all probability mutual by most young children. Individuals foresee his or her dad and mom are not going to yell their way en route to the coming from a gameplay and or follow and also on a recreation and apply. This is the game, of course.
Bye.
Prada Sax Vente.
See, and I thought it would have been by NFL jerseys.
Ah. It really threw you for a loop there, didn't it?
A little bit.
A little
It
bit.
sounded like NFL
It
jerseys.
didn't meet my expectations.
No, it
It left
really.
me hanging.
It harkened back to.
No, we were gonna not do it today. We're not gonna analyze the spam.
To be
mail.
honest, I couldn't follow that
Matt
one.
got swept up.
I
in
really
this.
couldn't
I
follow
was
that
just
one.
tired of being left out and fighting you guys on it.
That one
That's right.
legitimately had a lot of prepositions.
So, as we close, guys, I really want to impress upon you. If you like the podcast, go to iTunes, check us out, rate us, write a review, subscribe, please.
Come on, you gotta like us if you got this far into the night. It's
Obviously,
like hour
considering
two.
we broke 2 hours for the first time in a
Yeah.
long time.
Next week.
Yeah.
You almost forgot about that.
No,
part.
no, I was doing my promotions first.
Okay.
It's just because it's been a while since I pushed the email. Please email us if you have any questions, comments. We'd love to hear from you. And there's a donate button on the top right-hand corner of the website. Click on it. Give us your money so we can make the podcast better. It's not like anybody's going to
It's
anyway.
not the first time you put it that way.
I know.
Give us your money.
Seriously, guys, if we do this for free and we want to make the podcast better for you, if you like it, we'll only make it better.
Yeah, we better get. I just want rich fans at this point, because it seems like everybody's as broke as us.
Probably.
There you go.
All right.
Next week,
John's pick. What do you
This
got
is-
for us?
we have a proclaimed indie rock band, the Arctic
Self-proclaimed?
Monkeys. A self-proclaimed.
Interesting.
Arctic Monkeys with their new album, Okay, we're not sure if it's AM or AM.
Said that kind of Swedish-like.
It's fully capitalized, so I think it's AM, but I think it's supposed to represent, in my theory, and we'll find out if this is true by next week, I think it's supposed to it's a cop-out on a self-titled album. It's AM, standing for Arctic Monkeys.
I think it also has the
And
depth
then if
of-
it's self-titled, then it's AM.
which is
As in, you know...
Arctic
be.
Monkeys.
Yes, to
it could
Or
also
is an AM as in I am.
That's what I mean.
I am,
Yeah.
or it could actually mean morning. There's no periods, so it probably doesn't do that.
Who knows?
Either way, that's pretty layered.
It's been a
So
long
talking about
time
that.
since I've heard Arctic. I did listen to the first 2 tracks on this one to make sure I wanted to pick it this time, and I went with it.
All right, well,
Good for you.
tune in
Hey.
next week for that, and remember, as always, music is life, and life is good.